We did it.
Hey, good morning.
We're live. Good morning.
Was that a millennial pause?
I don't know. What's the millennial pause?
Millennial pause is this TikTok thing where people were like it's a Zoomer complaint that when millennials make TikToks, they like hit record and then they take a breath and they don't edit that out. Whereas Zoomer TikToks, where it's like a face, like a talking head sort of a thing,
Yeah.
usually have more of a almost like in media res approach to it, where it's like you feel like you're catching them in the middle of something they were already saying.
Oh, I got
Millennial one, there's like a plan. It's like, so you hit record and there's this like 1 or 2 second beginning, like as if the person is saying in their own head, this is on, right?
We millennials have been trained that way though, because when we make cell phone calls, I know some of y'all don't remember talking on the phone, but when we make phone calls, there's that moment that if you say hello immediately when you answer the phone, the person on the other side does not hear you say hello.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to pause. So, because I don't know how many times I've called someone and they say hello the moment they pick up the phone and I never hear it. So I'm like, hello, hello. They're like, hey, and like annoyed they have to say hey twice.
Yeah, I do like well, and now when I answer the phone, I'm usually also trying to get my headphones in, so
Yeah.
I don't even say anything because what's the point?
Exactly. Because what's the point? Oh, well, my I've got like the first gen Apple AirPods and the speaker in them, like the microphone in them went out like in the first 6 months.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've got that problem. 100% got that problem. All of my I've burned through 2 Gen 1s because I burned through 2 Gen 1s where I toasted the microphones because I sweat too much in them.
Oh,
Like, because I
interesting.
was using them to work out.
Yeah. Maybe that was
So
my problem.
I eventually sweated out like just destroyed the microphone. So the audio quality was great, but if I called anybody, they'd be like, "Where are you?"
Yeah, that was mine. So maybe because I worked out in them, maybe that's the problem.
Yeah. Anyway, man, what's
I've
up?
got a house full of Bluetooth ear headphones and
No, I know.
earbuds that just like don't live up to it. You know what I mean?
Justice says Steve works out. I worked out. I have not worked out in a while.
Oh, I got you.
I was trying to get running again.
Man, I need to do that too.
I messed up my back, and like about maybe a week ago, and I have not recovered from that.
Ooh, man, it takes longer and longer to recover as we get older. I've got a few years on you, so trust me, it gets rough. I'm gonna try to get back to running though, because I'm seeing all the pictures and videos of all my friends that ran the St. Jude marathon yesterday.
Right.
And
right.
And so I'm like, I had said I was going to try to get there again this year, but I did not. So it's time, man. It's time. Get back in shape.
Yep.
For my heart, because I'm old. I need my heart to last a lot longer. As I drink Red Bulls, you know.
Oh my gosh, it's too early for a Red Bull. It's 11. It's the right time. I mean, I'm doing coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee, Red Bull, it's kind of the same thing.
Well, I have coffee over here too, so
that sounds problematic.
It is.
Just gonna take a minute to say what's up to the chat. Michael, Justice, Noise Bloom, Todd, Steven,
Sassy. I see you.
Sassy, Snarky. What's up? Good morning. Yeah, we're doing a Sunday morning. We're competing with no sports yet, but
interesting. I don't know that there's a ton of crossover in these audiences.
I mean, you know, I don't watch the games. I just do fantasy, so that's actually a little complicated. But
let me close Discord because they're gonna beep in my ear for the next 2 hours. Yep, close that.
Justice says, I think the emphasis on health, retirement accounts, savings, and home ownership is a natural progression. I got really into Good morning, Vaughn. I got really into running maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. It was pre-COVID, and I ran a half marathon, and I found that after I ran it, I had to take like a month. I actually, even going into it, I almost like backed into it, if you know
Oh,
what I mean.
really?
Like going into it, I think I maybe got like a minor injury, and it was a
Yeah.
veterans. Was it a Veterans Day half? I don't remember. So it was already starting to like. I'm real finicky about temperature, like the temperature when I run, which is a big adjustment now here where I live, because it's most of the winter is outside of the temperature range that I prefer to run in.
Uh, So wait, the cold changed that much just between where you were and where you are now?
The morning temps, like the morning lows are in San Diego, it's like borderline. It's like my old rule when I lived in San Diego was like if it was above 50 degrees, I would run. But most mornings up here, like right now, it's 48 at 9 a.m.
Gotcha.
So I know that's not cold for like the rest of the country,
Yeah, no,
but
well, I live in the South, so that's cold to me.
yeah. And a big part of that is like because I want to wear like shorts and a tank top,
Yeah.
and anything more than that, I feel like I can't breathe.
Well, I got into running, so I was a non-traditional college student because I dropped out, I worked for a while, and then went back to school, right?
Right.
So I was a little older than rest of the folks I was in college with. Well, I got to my last semester and I needed a PE credit to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I was working, almost full time at the time. I think I was working full time. And so nothing fit my schedule. I wanted to take the scuba diving course because that sounded awesome. Get scuba dive certified, and it'd been great. But it didn't fit my schedule. So the only thing that worked for me at my small regional college was running for fitness. And so I took a semester of running, and it turns out I really loved it. And I ran a bunch of 5Ks, and I had a buddy of mine talk me into a half. I did a bunch of
Mhm.
half marathons. Then now I've done a couple of full marathons. And then COVID hit. The last time I ran was the St. Jude in 2019, last
Mhm.
full
Mhm.
marathon. And of course, then COVID hit, and I gained a bunch of weight, and I got COVID, and my breathing took forever to get correct again. And and I just, it's that snowball of the further you stay away from it. And so
Yeah.
now I'm like, it is time to get back into it. And I know it's going to be harder to get into it this time because I'm 4 years older than the last time I ran a marathon.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I need to do it just because I enjoy running. I'm slow. I'm a big guy. It's fine. But I really enjoy it, and it's good for my heart. In my family, cancer doesn't run as rampant as heart disease does. So
Mhm.
the Red Bulls and the coffee don't help. So I'm trying to cut those back. This is my Sunday treat, y'all.
Snarky says, "Be honest, would I laugh if I saw either of you throw a football?" I mean, just go
Snarky,
watch. Just
I,
go watch the. Go ahead.
I'm going to say that I'm a little out of practice right now, but I was slated to play college football until I shattered my ankle. So I
Um,
can throw a football. Now, I would have never been a quarterback, but I know how to throw a football.
I
I was the jock in high school who stumbled into playing music in college. To
right.
be really honest, I played baseball, basketball. I did shot put and discus on the track team, and I played football. Played baseball.
Yeah. So I mean, that's basically what I was going to say is um, maybe some people don't. I'm trying to find this video. We did when we were doing the case tests
Oh yeah, yeah.
for the music area cases. One of those case tests was I just I brought a bucket of softballs over to Ryan's house and proceeded to throw them as hard as I could at said case.
Oh
Oh,
nice.
and then we beat it with a baseball bat. I forgot about that part.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Man, I can swing a bat.
so can I throw a football? I've never been able to throw a football, even though I played plenty of pickup football. Um, you know, as a 5'4" sixth grader, you kind of just stand out But yeah, I just something about because the motion is different than a baseball. I just can't. I've
Yeah,
just never been able to
it's
do it.
actually throwing a football. That motion of the hand, not the motion of the arm, but the motion of the hand is actually the complete inverse of bowling. If you bowl with a curve, if you're a straight ahead bowler, this doesn't apply to you.
Oh, I could barely. Bowling is a whole other problem set for me.
That was how someone finally taught me to curve in bowling. Was they're like, you can throw a football, just do the opposite. You roll your hand the same way.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So
all this nonsense. What's up with what's new in you got any new gear world stuff for us?
Yeah, I have stupid stuff new, and we're gonna come back to. There was a comment I saw earlier. I'm trying to find it so we can come back to it because I feel like that's a fun jumping off point. Oh, Fuzz Imp, we'll come back to you at 11:07. So I got it in my head. I wanted a giant pedal board again, and it was stupid. I know that I hate it. I know that I hate everything about it. And I've done it, and now it's on the floor behind me, and I'm trying to convince myself I like it because I spent money on it.
Okay.
But I bought a couple of pedals. I bought some stuff used so I could afford it. I rebought a Volante, which I still think is the best all-around delay pedal on the market. I don't think you can do better than the Volante. You can do different than the Volante. You're not going to do better.
Right.
And I also bought I bought the Chase Bliss, the big ones, the Preamp Mark II and the CXM 1978. Yeah, they are real good. I don't know if they're going to live with me forever, but they're real good.
They're kind of in that space of like, it makes you kind of question what to do with them. Like you're either the Chase Bliss stuff. I mean, it's all fantastic. I have no direct complaints. It's just like it's a learning curve above what I think I can do.
Yeah, it's right now I'm playing the presets and moving faders, and it's real cool. But it's fun. If only one of them stays, it'll be the reverb.
Right. Can you answer this question for Vaughn?
Yes. So Vaughn, what makes the Volante so good? First of all, it's not it is expensive, but it's not the most expensive like multi-delay out there, right? And I call it a multi-delay because it's got 3 settings. It's got a tape, which is like it's multi-head, so I'd say it's more like an RE201, but I wouldn't call it an RE201 like pedal. It's got the drum, which obviously is like the Benson Echo Rec. And then it's got the studio, which is almost a digital delay sound. So you've got those 3 sounds. You've got tap tempo. You've got multi-head functionality. You've got the most insane stereo. It's got the most insane stereo options where you can split heads to specific sides. You don't have to do everything left and right. Like you can say, oh, I only want the second and third head to go to the left out, and I want the first and fourth head to go to the right out.
Oh, interesting.
And then you can even reduce the level of each one of those heads individually. So you get all these different variations. It's way more than I use it for, but it's capable of it. Plus you've got MIDI, it's just the best all around delay pedal because it does, at least for me, because it does a digital, which I never use, the tape and the drum, and you can be as clean or as warbly artifact laden as you want it to be.
Right. And that's a big thing. I mean, I've only played the Volante at NAMM actually. But it was really easy to get going in a basic way, and to me that's always like an important thing is can I at least get a good sound or 2 out of it without having to read a book first.
Now, the one thing is you're going to get, and people say this derogatorily, but it's a real thing. So I say this with no shade. You're going to get the Strymon sound. There is this Strymon sound. There is this sheen when you use Strymon pedals. And that's okay. If that's what you like, I like it personally. I think it sounds really good. and obviously a lot of other people do. So I highly recommend it. Steven, you're absolutely right. Option paralysis can set in, but you don't have to use all those features. That's what I do. I don't use all those. I use the various heads and do it that way. I don't do all the stereo splitting, but it does a lot. And as far as the comparison to the timeline, I've had the timeline a couple of times, and I think it's a great delay. But I never used any of the features that it has that the Volante doesn't have. So the Volante was the better delay for me. All right.
Very cool. I don't remember what day I posted it, but this was my beginning of the week, maybe last weekend project, finally. So the story behind this, I posted this on Instagram. Let me get the angle. Every pedal on here, I think, is a pedal that I've never, with the exception of the Prelude, the Quiet Theory Prelude, which is this guy right here. Yep. They're all pedals I've never played outside of the house. And most of these pedals, it was the first time I ever plugged them in. Which is sad because these like Mr. Blacks up here, I bought in 2017.
Oh yeah.
I think it took me 2 years just to open the package. They were a Black Friday purchase.
I have 0 Mr. Black pedals. So you remember when y'all were doing the wheel of pedals?
Yeah.
And I sent one in. My hope was to get the Mr. Black that y'all had on there.
Oh, the deluxe. Was it the deluxe or the deluxe? Or was it the plus or the deluxe plus?
It's whichever had reverb and trim, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the Mr. Black. Is it the deluxe or the deluxe? I think it's the deluxe plus. There's a deluxe plus and there's a deluxe plus.
Yeah, I really wanted that. That is not the one I ended up with, though. I ended up with the what is it even called? The really awful one, like the worst possible one.
The Ibanez Punk Buster.
No, it was I don't remember. I wish I did. I ended up selling it. It was fine. But y'all also were very kind and sent a couple of the TC electronic pedals along with it because it was such a low value pedal.
Yeah, we were yeah, I'm trying to remember which one that would have. There were 2 or 3 pedals on there at that time that like I think we actually did that giveaway. And then before we started shipping, Ryan was like, let me make videos of all of this, and he ended up finding out like at least one of the pedals was just straight up broken.
Oh wow.
Like and we didn't know because we would just get things and do the swap, and you know, oh yeah, was it the DoD flashback fuzz?
No, it wasn't that one. That would have been real bad. But
that one still gets comments and like going for it, but
I can't find it. Why can't I find it? I think it was a Sound Tank. I think it was one of the Sound Tank ones. Is there a Sound Tank rat style pedal?
Because
I feel like that's what it was.
I don't know. The one I remember we had was the Slam Punk. That's what it's called.
Yeah, I don't think that was it. But I'm old and can't remember things anymore, so
I'm not sure what other. There was probably another one on there, but I don't. That's the one I remember. Was it a Power Lead?
No, I don't remember that. I think it's the Roadkill.
The Roadkill. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Forgot about that one.
I think
it was a terrible name.
I think it was the Roadkill.
And it's the rat style. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. There it is. The Sound Tank Roadkill, not the Proco Roadkill. That would have been super rad. Yeah, the Sound Tank Roadkill was terrible. It was awful. Anyway, so you finally put together a new pedal board with pedals that have just been sitting around. Have you been playing more guitar though?
Yeah, I did until my back started acting up. But I actually got to play a couple times. I have this idea in my head that I think I want to go back to like learning the songs of my youth.
Oh, dude, that's a great way to do it.
And of course, what is the first? So the first, and because I think that now I'm probably going to get there, and I'm going to realize that everything I think is wrong. But I find that like a lot of the songs that well, so I'll just say this, like the last like 2 or 3 Paramore albums are kind of like impossible to learn. Like not because like the learning curve is very high.
Gotcha. Okay.
The guy who plays guitar for them, whose name is Taylor York, I should have known that offhand, is like absurd, and he does a lot of, especially their newer albums, are a lot of like style fusion. So it's a lot of this like palm muted neo funky whatever thing that's going on all over guitar music right now. And so I just I'm like, that's the stuff where I'm like, oh, I'll learn that, and then I pull it up, I'm like, no, I won't. But you know what song is really easy is Machine Head by Bush. That song's
Man,
and it's a lot of fun. And
what album was that on?
I've got that Mr. Black BB74X, which is like a Marshall pedal. So that's that's the perfect kind of pedal to start with that.
I agree. That's awesome. So are you playing like you're playing guitar and not bass though?
Yeah, I've been playing guitar.
Okay.
I probably need I feel like, I mean, it's rough. NAMM is 6 weeks from now. And I still don't really know how to play music.
This, I just got a notification. This is your reminder that Orange Amplifiers is doing their Wish Granted giveaway.
What does that mean?
So what they do is they I'm going to read the rules here because I think this is awesome. Mm-hmm. You basically go to their post on Instagram and you wish for something they make and hashtag it Wish Granted. And
interesting.
And they pick people. They do this every December. Mm-hmm. And they give away like $25,000 worth of Orange amplifiers.
Wow.
Yeah. So highly recommend everyone do that. I hope someone gets it. I have tried every year. I've tried to get an OR50. Is that right? Maybe. Did they make an OR50? Whatever their big.
I think so. Watt. Yeah. OR30.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe an OR30. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I've tried
the Rockerberg 50.
Oh, that was the other one. I've tried different amps each year. I've tried the Rockerverb 50. I've tried the OR30, and I've tried the Tremlord. So I don't know. I'll wish for something this year.
Is a Tremlord a pedal?
No, Tremlord is their reverb and tremolo in an amp.
Oh, okay.
It was their attempt at being Fendery. As close as Orange gets to being Fendery.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's either that or it's their attempt on the Tremoverb.
Yeah. Oh man! I was talking to someone recently. I think it was Jason Fuzzmonger has a Tremoverb.
Oh, really?
I think he does.
That's an amp that's long on my list of.
Yep.
Like I used to try to find them, because that was I think is it the Tremoverb I'm thinking of?
Well, it was the Mike Einziger amp.
Okay, yeah,
the way a lot of people knew it. So
that's how I knew it.
Yeah,
as the Mike Einziger amp. And so that was I can't remember if it was a Tremoverb because I know they did another reverb head, but I couldn't remember what it was called.
Yeah, I have way too many pedals just laying around anymore. I realize. Well, I can say this with you because you don't have them the way Ryan has them. I can't even enter this conversation with Ryan. But,
right. No one should.
No, it's dumb. But I really need to organize my life because it actually gives me anxiety having this much stuff around.
I've been trying to convince Ryan of different things. I've like tried to convince him to just give me a box of the of Affordable pedals that he doesn't want,
Yeah.
and just use that as like part of the next wave of like Patreon signups.
Oh, cool.
Um,
I'll discontinue my Patreon and re-sign up. It'll be great.
when you discontinue and re-sign up, I don't send another gift pack.
Well, this is garbage, Steve. What the hell kind of back alley operation are y'all running?
Now the thing that I would love to do with Patreon, honestly, is really just take all of because Ryan's got like several, like probably 3 or 4 bins
Mm-hmm.
of it, and I would love to just like send out affordable pedals to probably like, I don't know what tier we would go
Yeah,
with,
you would
but like
obviously do it
above
for like
tier 2.
inner circle or higher kind of
But
thing.
even at inner circle, that's like almost 50 packages.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's crippling levels of. It's not even that much work. It's just work I don't want to do.
Joe, I also cut back on Patreon last year. This year, I've started re-adding them. Honestly, what's happened is the Patreon supporters for my podcast, I've just been turning that money into support for other Patreon supporters. I keep enough in my Patreon receipts to cover things like my Adobe subscription, my hosting fees,
Yeah.
and to pay for Riverside, which I use to record.
Mm-hmm.
But everything above that, I've pretty much been just tossing back at other creators. So it's good. I wonder if I need to start trimming those back again, but I don't know, because I think I still subscribe to some creators who don't really create anymore, and so. But they're still friends, and I feel bad about taking it away, kind of thing. Yeah, it's weird.
I just found the most important gear news of the week.
Uh-oh.
You know,
Are you going to tell me how to pronounce Lurksist?
Oh yeah, I don't know how to do that either.
That's more important than the amp itself.
A lot of people probably think that it is Joe Bonamassa going on Rick Biato so they could talk about how rich each other are. But I just saw this, the most important news, gear news of right now. Lenny Kravitz kept a joint he smoked with Mick Jagger for 10 years, and then he smoked it because he was out of weed.
That is, man, he's going to regret that one.
I don't understand. For some reason, I thought Lenny Kravitz lived in LA.
Does he not?
I don't know, because I'm like,
let's see. Let's find out. Google machine. Where does Lenny Kravitz live? This is some stalker shit right here. He's born in New York.
Oh, so maybe he's based out of New York. I don't know how. I don't know how available weed is in New York. I'm not in New York.
Oh, dude, Lenny's gonna be 60 next year. What? What?
Lenny Kravitz is also on my list. I think that's like my mid-level or mid to advanced level of song I want to learn, but I also need to probably start on it now, because the like opening pentatonic of "Are You Gonna Go My Way" is like a default fuzz. I think I've talked about that before.
Yeah,
like
it's a great riff.
I accidentally stumbled on it, and I can't not play it when I'm like messing around with the fuzz pedal or any kind of like high gain.
Yeah.
But now the problem is that I need to learn the rest of the song.
Fuzzit makes a point here we should talk about here in a little bit, and I still got to come back to his original question. But if Gibson makes, I was discussing this yesterday with the guys over at the Guitar Dads podcast, because they shared a picture of one of the Rick Biato, the dual cutaway that's going secondhand for like stupid money, right? And I said, yeah, but they weren't stupid money when they released new. It's because they were a limited run.
Yeah,
they were like $19.99 brand new, which granted I know is a lot of money, but if Gibson puts something out that you like, that's going to be limited, you better grab it or you're never going to get it. Like right now, I am hunting for. I will have to sell things to get it, but I'm hunting for one of the Luther Dickinson ES335s that they put out. They're impossible to find. And they're way too expensive for what they are, because it was a 335 with P90s, not a 330 with P90s.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. Anyway,
The
continue.
Gibson Custom Shop Lenny Kravitz 2002 is there's one for 16 grand
No.
on Reverb.
No.
The Rick Biato range right now is there's a red one for 2,100. The most expensive blue one is 3,100. Which that's a tough one, and that's where I feel like the collector's market is a little. I think I'm getting old because I'm reverting to a lot of like my like college opinions.
I gotcha.
Where like, okay, Gibson Rick Biato, it's got his, and I know this was a lot of people's take when it came out. It's got his name on the truss cover. Otherwise, it's just a double cut Les Paul special.
It isn't just a double cut Les Paul special, though. It's the only double cut Les Paul special Gibson has made in the last like 10 years, not 10 years, last 2 or 3 years. It's it.
No, I recognize that, but wasn't the last double cut special they made
the tribute series
like $900?
Yeah, but that was a tribute series guitar.
I mean, this is just the barely there Pelham blue finish.
Snarky, not past 40. You are so kind. I turn 43 next week.
There's a 97 cherry red for 1,500.
See, that's the way to go. Honestly, the tributes are still, they're going for too much money because they were the only Les Paul double cut tribute for a little while.
Yeah.
But they're still good. I had one. They're good guitars.
The tribute's weird too, because the tribute's the wraparound, so it's not even like I guess if you want the tribute with the tail, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's one of those things where if Gibson has made enough spec guitars that if you want a very specific spec and it's not something in their normal line, you're gonna have to hunt.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little ways. So Fuzzimp said that wants to build a Jazzmaster, but doesn't know if wants to buy parts individually or buy something to start swapping things out on. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was like at 11:07.
Oh, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I said it way earlier. There it is, 11:07. I cannot believe I remembered that.
That's what you need. Now, granted, I found the thing. Here we go. He has a much more active chat than anything that we ever do here on this channel. Not just you and I, but even Ryan. Yeah. Like Phil McKnight will have like 1,000 people on a live, like in his chat. And so his mods will, if they see a good question, they copy paste it, and then they are running like on the side like a WhatsApp or whatever group chat that the mods will, like I said, screen grab or whatever the questions and send them to Phil and be like, hey, here's he's got it's not even like he has a team. I saw a comment before we get to this, saw a comment the other day talking about YouTubers with teams.
Oh yeah.
And there's, some of them definitely do.
Oh yeah, you look at someone like the big ones though, like Good Mythical Morning. They can't do what they do without a team.
Well, even like in the gear space, there's people or in the general music guitar space, there's people with teams, and it gets really obvious. Like I've had the fortunate experience of meeting a lot of these people, and so when you meet them, a lot of times you meet like one or two other people that you're like you're the editor or whatever, you're the producer, like
right.
But in the perfect example, I'm not going to say he doesn't, but I would be very surprised if Rick edits his own videos. But maybe he does. I don't know.
Yeah,
I would be surprised.
Yeah, I would be really surprised, especially for the rate he puts them out.
Yeah.
So back to this though, just for a second.
Parts Jazzmaster.
I think So whether to start with a used axe or part it out, it sort of depends to me how close what you want is to something that already exists. If what you want, and I see another comment here, we'll get to there. If it's not even close and you're basically going to be changing almost everything and you don't need the guitar immediately, like you have time, I would buy it parted out and I would be searching for used parts. And because that was always the fun thing to me, the hunt and finding things. Don't get overly impatient to complete it because you'll get the best deals while you're hunting. Especially if, like you say, you want a swimming pool route, maybe hardtail, possibly chambered body with F-hole bound and blocks on the neck. You may have to specifically order those parts.
This conversation with the hardtail actually just came up on the most recent, I think it's the most recent episode of Guitar Nerds, because they're doing that vintage guitar giveaway thing.
Yep. I'm just happy they went with British Racing Green.
And Vintage Guitars Us. And one of the questions in there, because I guess it's going to be a Jazzmaster style, is that whether or not it would be a hardtail or not. And Joe shot down hardtail.
Yeah.
All I see on here are Strats. Am I looking at the wrong thing?
I do not know.
I'm not going to dive into that because I don't care that much. Warmoth and others, yeah, they can do jam. So it's like, I mean, any of the bigger brands like Warmoth will do what you want. So.
Yeah. I also, and this, I know this is blasphemy, but I have just come to the conclusion I'm not a big Jazzmaster pickup fan either. I have tried. I've had a few Jazzmasters. I've got one now that I changed the pickups in. I'm gonna, before I completely abandon the effort, I'm gonna change to 500K pots instead of the 1 meg pots to see if it takes some of the harshness out that I don't like. But if it doesn't, I'm down to the solution of either selling it or completely changing the pickups that are in it, probably to P90s. Which means I need to order a new pick guard. Actually, I have one for P90s that may fit it. I need to fit test that before I spend more money.
In other dumb news, Wolfgang Van Halen named his favorite head and cab Noel and Liam after the Gallagher brothers.
I love the hard-hitting news that you're going after today, Steve.
My first thought when I saw this was they are mismatched, but somehow it works.
Yeah, except that, for 3/4 of the year, you can't use them together because they can't be in the same room.
Yeah. Apparently, it was the EVH 5150 head, and he does not specify the cabinet. Oh, the cabinet is an SA126, whatever that is.
I don't know. I'm going to look it up while you talk more about it.
Oh, that's all I have. I just thought it was funny.
Oh. A seismic audio.
Oh, interesting.
126.
Someone was talking about seismic audio the other day, and basically that they suck. I don't really know a lot about them.
Interesting.
I think they tend to sell like empty cabs, and
no, I'm sorry. That's an EVH speaker cabinet SA126.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
It's an EVH cab. Yeah, because seismic audio was the first thing that came up in the search results. I'm like, really? I mean, I understand like seismic audio is affordable, but I don't think Wolfgang needs affordable speaker cabinets.
Right.
So I don't know. I've been on a weird thing lately, which I've stopped, thankfully, because I had to stop buying amps. I have too many amps in my house, too many expensive amps in my house. They take up a lot of space. They take up a lot of capital. But I was edging towards like wanting a 5150 there for a little while. I do not play music that would use a 5150. But I was sure gassing for one hard. Thought
I
I'd learn
can't
it.
read. The SA-126 is his new signature model guitar. The cabinet is unspecified. Whatever. Need more hard-hitting news, like how to pronounce the Kirkst or whatever.
I don't know. Lurkst.
What does it even? What is it even supposed to stand for?
I don't know.
Like, it feels like it should stand for something.
I don't know, but it's dumb. I can't say it. Like, I don't know. The amps are probably going to be fine, right? I have no issues with the amps. For those of you who don't know, we're talking about the new Alex Lifeson Mojo Tone collaboration to build a line of amps for Alex Lifeson. LERXST. I can't pronounce an X and ST right next to each other like that. I have no idea. They look fine. In the same week, Jimmy Page announces some limited Super Dragon amps that are supposed to sound like a modded Marshall Super Bass. They're going to be $4 million, I'm sure. Look, and that's as someone who is willing to spend some money on amplifiers. They're going to be too much money. Just buy a Super Bass. I had a Marshall Super Bass. I used to gig one for about a year. 100-watt variety. Sound guys hated me. But just buy a Super Bass and mod it. It'll be cheaper than whatever they're selling these Super Dragons for.
Oh my gosh, the website is like, if you are prone to like epileptic seizures,
oh yeah, don't go
to the website. Also, oh my gosh, this website's broken. It's scrolling me in places. It's all the fonts are giant. Like, I get it. Somebody thinks every Rush fan is 70 years old. I mean, like, it's just black and red and white.
Yeah.
I gotta leave this site before my brain shuts down.
Yeah, it's like,
I mean,
so
it's too
for
early
those of
for
you
this.
that aren't scrolling it, when you scroll the site, as you scroll down, it gets to one section, and instead of scrolling down, it decides to go sideways, and then down again later, and then sideways, and it's really annoying. It's especially annoying because they don't have a button to take you back to the top. So if you need to go back to the top, you have to scroll back through all that.
Who decided, like, hey, I've got a really great website idea? And then the other thing to that is like, to that point, again, it's a website. It's got a lot of very confusing things happening, and this is a product for old people. They're not going to be able to navigate the website.
No, this is a product for like nostalgia.
Rush is fine.
Rush is fine. I have no issues with Rush. They're not my thing. I mean, I've listened to a couple of the hits, which is weird to think of a progressive rock band with hits, but they have them, so obviously there's something there.
They wrote really good pop songs.
Yeah.
Like, their hits are really good pop hits.
Yeah. So we'll see, but it's also at the same time, it's funny. It's just, it's the obvious timing, the marketing scheming around it. It's at the exact same time that they put out that article like a week or two ago where they had said they weren't going to tour anymore because Neil Peart's not there anymore. But then apparently Paul McCartney's in Alex Lifeson's ear and like, no, y'all need to go back on the road. This is what you do. And that came out in an article like 2 weeks ago. And then this week they dropped these new amps. They're going to go back on the road. They're going to get somebody to play drums and they're going to go back on the road.
Right.
Snarky, can you hear Geddy Lee's voice through all the effects they put on the vocals? Like, I'm not sure I actually know what Geddy Lee's voice sounds like.
It sounds amazing, obviously. I got on a big Coheed and Cambria kick maybe like a week ago. So I do think that if I was older, and Rush was the heaviest thing going on kind of in that genre, I probably would have been really into them. But now it's now now I want to listen to that prog segment that's a little more modern. I
Yeah.
played the Mars Volta for my teenager a couple weeks ago, and she was
Ooh.
like, "Yeah, this is great."
I met one of the drummers for the Mars Volta once. I say one of because they've gone through like
Oh, have
4
they
or 5
really?
of them. Um, it was a weird thing. I know almost nothing about Mars Volta, if I'm honest. Or that other band that split out of them. What's
Sparta?
Sparta. Yeah. I think of Sparta and Mars Volta to progressive rock as I think of Wilco, and they came out of Uncle Tupelo. So Uncle Tupelo was this alt country band
Yeah,
that
yeah.
split and gave us Wilco and gave us
Sunvolt?
Sunvolt.
No.
Thank you.
Is it
Yes, that's it.
Sunvolt? Is Sunvolt more traditionally blues based?
No, they're both very alt country,
Okay.
very like I start to put them in there's a weird crossover there where alt country edged into like indie rock, and there's a bunch of indie rock and alt country bands that occupy the same space in my brain.
Mhm.
Like Yankee mm, there's brain not working on me. But yeah, so those are all alt country, but there are some they start to um edge into indie rock.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Vaughn is correctly pointing out the band that you're thinking of is At the Drive-In. So
Okay.
At the Drive-In split, um, from what I remember, and there's probably some like very finer points that I don't that I am getting wrong. Basically, um, Lurks is Alex's nickname within the band. So,
Um
but so At the Drive-In broke up. The one of the singers, so not Cedric, but the other guy,
uh-huh.
basically went on to form Sparta. They became so At the Drive-In was a pretty like avant-garde for like post-hardcore kind of a band.
Mhm.
Um and So Sparta became more of like a straightforward like indie emo whatever outfit. And the Mars Volta became
The progressive rock.
let's try to be, you know, 2003's Yes.
Gotcha. Going back to Eric, I do remember cowpunk. Mostly I remember Social Distortion. I don't remember a lot of other bands in that category. But yeah, cowpunk was essentially country punk. It was the thing. Hank Williams III was very much in that like area. Um, he's like the bastard child of Hank Williams Jr.
Yeah.
And he does like every album is like I felt like it was rolling dice. I'm sure there was some planned thing around it that I didn't know, but every
Mhm.
album was either like ultra country, like original Hank Williams country, or just like punk. And it
Yeah.
was so great. Um, Michael Krause, the Venn diagram alt country, Lucero 100% fits in there. I've seen Lucero so many times. I've seen them play like frat parties at my little regional college kind of thing. Lucero is an incredible band.
Amanda says Yes was the Yes of 2003. But Yes was still presumably playing all of their old stuff in 2003. I don't know.
I was in a band with a guy who was a massive Yes fan, and I just spent every night having my mind blown by what he would play. And then I tried to listen to Yes to get some of that influence, and I could not listen to it.
Mm,
I wish I could. I really wish I could. Um, it's not like I want to dislike these music. They just don't resonate with me.
right.
I like jazz. I like bebop. I like hard bop. I like progressive music, but for some reason, the Yeses and the Rush and even Pink Floyd, you know, the genesis of progressive rock, they never spoke to me. So anyway, that's not where I thought we'd go today. That's an interesting tangent. I was a huge alt country fan though. I felt like there was a magazine called No Depression. I used to read it religiously. Apparently, it still exists as like a quarterly, similar to Fretboard Journal, and I need to subscribe to it. I think that's going to be what I do this year. First of all, I'm going to finally subscribe to Fretboard Journal, but then I'm also going to subscribe to No Depression because I just absolutely love that magazine. Uh-oh.
Snarky says, best show I saw was in the 80s when he was in the Navy. Aerosmith got back.
Sorry, I can't even read that out loud. I can't.
We'll just leave it there for folks. Actually, I'm going to change it. This goes back to Fender's whole thing mid-COVID, whatever, on the whole, like, oh,
we're going to focus on
female artists. Like, this was an obvious one to me.
And let's be honest, what they should be saying is not we're going to focus on female artists. What we're going to stop focusing on cis male artists and focus on other people. But they haven't done it. Julian Baker is sitting right there. Right there. She plays a Telecaster and only a Telecaster. Let's go.
Right. I'm going to bring someone in. Fuzz Emo.
What up?
I didn't spell it right. I was like, oops.
I'm going to step out for a second. I'll be right back.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can get it to rotate. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
There it is. Something.
Yeah.
How's it going, buddy?
Man, it's good. Sunday morning, we're chilling out. We're hanging out. We were supposed to do this last week, but, the post-Thanksgiving thing was like, nah, it's not happening, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel it, man. Being a pedal builder, there's like a window where it's the busiest time of the year. I think last year between Thanksgiving and early January, I built 400 pedals last year, which is like
gosh,
half my year. Oh, it was insane.
I've been noticing you've I don't know if you've just ramped up or if I'm just paying attention, like your social media chatting and getting into things. Is your pedals picking up? Because I've been meaning to ask some people about this, like how's this year's holiday season compared to past ones for you?
Ooh, I mean, there's always challenges in the pedal industry. I think this whole year has been kind of slower than last year, but in terms of the greater economy, I think retail's doing well. But to answer your question, I think the biggest challenge for most builders, me in particular, is that finding the right advertising avenues. It used to be Instagram and Facebook were so effective for your dollar. Like you would just get such good return on investment. And I think the challenge right now is that TikTok has taken off as the predominant video platform, but it's not super advertiser friendly. Like I've done a bunch of campaigns and I haven't seen those returns. So I think that's the biggest challenge for anybody right now is figuring out what's going to be an effective advertising avenue. So I just stopped running ads. I just go off organic right now. It's a little risky, but it gets better customers it's surprising how many sales you can still get running organic,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with TikTok. Like you said, it's not very advertiser friendly. I see a lot of advertisements on there, but I scroll right past them when I'm on there. It's like, nope. I don't even care what you're selling if it's something I'm into, because that's not what I'm on TikTok for.
Yeah.
At this point, TikTok is my political news outlet. That's where I get all of my political news. So
I can see it. I mean, there's 2 billion users or something on TikTok. You have to have a presence. I have a very small presence there, and it has led to sales. Like I can draw a straight line. Like this person was engaging, then they say, "Hey, I snagged one." You have to have a presence there. I think at first I was pretty hesitant because my early experience with TikTok, because I thought it was just a garbage app that was going to get like phased out, which was a very real possibility.
Absolutely.
There for a minute, it was going to get banned, and it ended up not. But it was so close. So I was like, when I first started, Instagram was still relatively early. Like before I ever did the company, I was making demos and stuff, and you could build a really good loyal following on Instagram.
Yeah, it's harder to do now.
Yeah,
that's one of the conversations. This is maybe like a space I don't fully want to like walk into, but one of the conversations that's happening, Hank Green brought it up on Twitter, is that with all the Twitter, basically, Elon did this whole thing this week where they said, he said, well, if the advertisers think that they can blackmail me by pulling advertisement and not giving me their millions of dollars, then they can go fuck themselves. Like that was literally what he said, right? And but Hank Green pointed out that Twitter has for years the worst conversion rate of any social media platform.
That makes sense.
So
I believe it.
And there's some other things I saw where somebody claimed to be part of the ad buy team for Twitter, and basically said that when they when all of that group, the people who were responsible for maintaining ads, got fired like a year or so ago, that broke all those relationships. And advertising is very much like a very relationship driven. Those are all the people where Apple says like, well, our conversion rates were already bad, and now the person that we liked, we're no longer really helping that individual out. So we like their motivation for sticking around is like non-existent. And so it looks weird when a bunch of them do it all at once, but that's unfortunately, we kind of, I think when you watch trends, it's a domino. But Hank pointed out like when the conversion rates are that bad, definitely TikTok, I almost always skip the ads, and there's a lot of ads now, which also doesn't help.
Yeah, I feel like out of every 5 videos I watch, 3 are ads.
Yeah.
So I think we're at a point where everybody was worried it was going to be supplanted, and I still think TikTok is I still think YouTube is the play.
YouTube is the play. Yeah.
It's still the place, because that's where people go to hear and find out about things. So you just got to get in those people who people are actually watching, like Ryan and Steve. Not me. They're not watching me. It's fine.
It's funny. I came up with
an audio
podcast. Code, I think like 3 or something. If you're talking about running Black Friday sales all month, the code still works. BF23, 25% off everything. Pheasant.com. If you ZZIMP. But no, I'm about to launch a new pedal, and I'm really trying to strategize, because I used to have a list of YouTubers that I would go to, and that would lead to like a very significant conversion rate. But the last couple times, like, it's a good brand building exercise. Like YouTube, I think you're right, is always going to be the most relevant platform for long form content, and even the short form content. They're still killing it. But I have noticed, it's especially as a pedal company, unless the name is so established. So, for example, JHS comes out with the Nauticlon and sells 20,000 in a week and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I came out with the Nauticlon, if I had come out with the Nauticlon, I would have sold 10.
Right.
Like there's just the reality of you have to put in the work over time, and I think that was something that I was getting frustrated with, because my first couple of years I sold a lot of pedals without spending as much on ads. But then I started realizing, okay, the market's shifting. You have to be a lot more creative, and it's just a good note for any brands, like working with Ryan or 60 Cycle. Is like, when he did that demo for me, it was the perfect timing. It was the perfect demo for where I was at that point. That was in January of last year. And there's a lot of smaller builders, or maybe struggling builders, that are trying to figure out what to do, and the best thing you can do is just be active on socials. And I can't think of much else than that. Put out lots of good demos.
Yeah, you got to be active. You got to be likable too. I mean, and likable is a broad definition, because what is likable in like the hardcore scene isn't necessarily what's likable in the the John Mayer blues rock scene or whatever.
Well, I mean, and I think the perfect example of that is I don't know what the brand is called now, because I think they changed names. ? And actually, I heard he changed names because he finally realized that he torpedoed his own brand. Is Joe over at Lone Wolf? Like, I'm not going to say he made a great, like, he claimed to have made the best HM2. Whether or
Speaking of
not
HM2s, I'm putting one out. It's
is
a
that
muff.
what is that what the sender is?
The Sender 5 was originally a muff variant. Now it has a pre-boost and a full standard HM2 EQ boost on the left foot switch. And it's surprising to me how musical that is without the rest of the circuit. So
Mm,
you've got like a Russian muff with the HM2 EQ post. Because I've been using chainsaw mids in a bunch of my pedals. Shroot has it, a bunch of other ones. Because it's just
mhm.
1K, like kind of narrow Q, and you crank it, and that gets the saw. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about Joe too much. I try not to talk about other builders in
Oh,
negative
I
light,
mean,
but
yeah,
he had a public image problem that I think changing the name did slightly help.
yeah,
Yes.
and that was my only point. Is
Yeah.
is there are brands that um they may or may not make a great product. I don't know. I can't.
Right.
I know there was a lot of people dunked on Lone Wolf in particular because the holes were always misaligned, kind of a thing, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
dude, just buy a drill press already.
Yeah. I'm not sure what he was doing. He must have been hand drilling. He does a lot of things strange and
Yeah,
by hand. We're we're
like,
somewhat we have friends of friends, and we've talked about things before. I mean, I obviously don't support when he kind of trolled and shit posts on everyone, but
yeah,
That'll
surprisingly,
do it.
he can be a very reasonable person behind the scenes, but the public persona thing is really hard to roll back from. Like,
yeah.
if you there's was a couple specific incidents around the time before when I was just demoing stuff and looking at some of the existing boutique companies. It's like word gets out what you're like either behind the scenes or how you treat demo artists or certain posts. Another one that's really I've always made it a point not to push either religion or politics, even on my personal page because it's public, like my personal
Hmm.
Facebook, because those opinions either can get screenshot or brought back up, or
Yep.
like you're a public figure once you run a company and you have to remain as neutral as possible unless you're willing to sacrifice potential lost sales, and I'm not.
Yeah.
Like
That's
there
the
was
other thing.
even, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say if you know your niche, you can be that
Yeah.
person. I was gonna say like some people that I was talking about, like the likable on either side. Like you look at
Hmm.
someone like Nick from Wonder Effects, right? Who I absolutely love him, but he's got a personality type, and not everyone's gonna jive with his level of sarcasm, right?
Hmm.
And
Right.
then you've got someone like Zach over at Mythos, who's a genuinely likable guy, but if his pedals aren't your thing, they're not going to be your thing. It's like you've got to. I think of those two guys as who have taken that they need to be in the community, and they are in very different ways. And I think they're both relatively successful at it.
Yeah, Steve from Does It Doom is kind of my template. We spent an hour on a one-on-one live stream, voice Zoom thing,
Hmm.
and I got real in depth with him about things. And he has his guitar brand, Woodwright, or Woodwright, and they just launched a Matt Pipe signature like 4 days ago. They're sold out.
Oh wow.
All
Oh
all the
wow!
run that was available, they sold out, and it's a testament to he built his brand from the to start with his one knob pedals and then the guitar thing. But how he started was years of doing these lesson content. Like he built out a whole infrastructure, and his company's a lot bigger than I thought it was when I talked to him about how many people are involved. But
Yeah,
he's a personality, and he actually went to some other demo guys and was like, look, start showing your face, start talking to the camera. Like good video and good audio isn't quite enough anymore. You have to be a personality if you're going to operate in the gear
Yeah.
space,
And
unless
and
the
it's
pedals are so good they can stand on their own, which is
yeah.
rare.
And that's tricky too. Like there's some I've had some conversations with some other demo folks who just want to make great demos, and they don't want to play the personality game, and that's it's kind of tricky because it's like you're pulling this line between where at some point, basically at what point are you so personality driven that you're starting, you're less of a gear channel and more of like the Kardashians with a guitar, you know, and
Yeah.
I get where people are wary about that stuff. But the flip side of it is, you know, I know Ryan's had conversations, and I've had conversations with brand owners where we're like, dude, you need to stop posting.
Yeah.
You either need to take your page private, or you need to stop posting whatever. And you know, a lot of people get very up in the air, and it's like, okay, well then, if you don't want to do that, then you cannot get mad when somebody, like you said, somebody screenshots your post and says, I can't believe what brand X is, the owner of brand X is saying on Facebook, and puts it on Reddit or whatever. And, you know,
That's even why I left Discord, because, um, you get this kind of comfort, especially the Discord servers I was in. You get this kind of comfort of safety of being able to kind of say whatever you want, and then realizing that it's still ultimately a public forum, and those
Right.
things can reflect poorly on you. Like I remember this one particular one, we had kind of like a public chat, and then there was like a private, like a whole section that was just for like the hardcore OGs, where you could really talk about things. But even in that, it's like you still don't like expressing my opinions on, you know, legalization of things, and just there's a lot that it's like it's better just leave that out and not have it associated with it. And it's the one thing that I think is funny, though, the flip side of that is I think for a long time I was really hesitant to talk about my Christian background. And like worship and pedal boards are so like that's one of the biggest markets that exists. Like
Dude,
oh
yes.
yeah.
so to like feel any like I used to feel shame about like that was where I learned how to play guitar. It's like I started when I was 12 and I was on stage by I was 13, and that's how I got to where I am. And um obviously there's some careful things to navigate there, but one thing I'll follow up to that you were kind of talking about, like kind of pulling people to the side. Like I don't pull people to the side, but there's been some posting recently where I was like about to use somebody for a campaign, and I just am, they didn't know, but I was like, yeah, I'm just not gonna use that person
Yeah.
because
Well,
they're expressing like pretty intense political opinions. It's like I don't want that to reflect back on me because that's not. I
Sure.
make pedals. Like I don't. I'm not a social commentator. You know.
yeah, and
Like
that's the other thing is like it's another thing to have opinions, and everyone's obviously entitled to have whatever
yeah.
opinions it is you want to have, but you need to understand that if those opinions don't make you likable or they are contrary to your goal as a builder, you need to hire someone to handle the social media aspect for you, because you can't just completely vanish either. That's the hard
No. Yeah.
part.
For sure. Well, and you know, one of the brands that I'm thinking of was a brand that we were in talks with to actually we've never done this with any other company,
Mhm.
but this was a company that we were potentially going to take over their whole social media marketing. This was a few years ago,
Yeah.
and one of the things we said what in the conversation is the guy started posting some stuff, and we're like, look, like if we take this over, like we're not going to post anything like that. We need to have like we need to be able to vet everything. And all of a sudden it was, well, you're just trying to censor me and did it. I was like, well, if you're going to give us money, you need to let us run the thing.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
not going to say, hey, we're taking this over. We don't want to be affiliated with something that we don't have control over. And the dude flipped out, and that was the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's
And he's not in
everybody needs
business
to be
anymore.
known. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, capitalism. You vote with your dollar. And
Yeah.
so ultimately people will realize these things. And I'm not out to censor anybody's speech or art. It's just I'm just saying why I do what I do.
Yeah.
It's like I want to make this as successful as it possibly can be, and it's hard enough just to literally run it day to day and keep up on socials, let alone making it extra hard mode, having hot takes that I feel like I need to spread. So it's
Yeah.
like
I mean, there was a whole thing, you know, Ryan posted his first, one of these rude and nasty comments post yesterday. And I got into it with somebody who said, well, I post rude and nasty comments and they always get deleted. Well, my response was, and this is true, it's like the only comments we ever really delete is if you basically say something racist, say something homophobic, or say something that's against that. Like, basically, if you're saying like, oh, you guys are clearly special needs dudes,
Oh
like
yeah.
those are the things that are going to get deleted.
I had a comment like that on my my most watched video is my demo of the Epiphone Firebird.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a comment from a dude because I used the word analog, but I used it not in the electrical sense. I used it in the making comparison sense.
Right.
If something is similar to another, it's an analog for it, right? Proper
Yeah.
usage, right?
Yeah.
He
Oh,
decided
right.
to use the comment section to call me out and said, the word you mean is analogy. You should probably open a dictionary or thesaurus before you start. I'm like, dude, I'm a fucking librarian. I have a master's degree in research. I literally know what I'm doing. So I defined it for him. And then he was also like, he tried to comment about the pickups and said, oh no, Epiphone and Gibson only use actual Firebird pickups. I'm like, dude, where have you been since the 1990s? So like I corrected him. And then of course, and I did it actually relatively diplomatically, but he came back with, oh, well, talking about living in mom's basement, obviously. I mean, just like instantly insults. Right. And that's what people do. And it's like, I just delete. I was like, this is my space.
Yeah.
I don't need you here. Instant delete. You can't be civil.
It's always, I think the funniest thing to me with all of it is when people think you're getting worked up, and it's like, man, it's a Saturday. I just poured a gin and hot chocolate. Like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Gin
my
and hot
entertainment.
chocolate? Is there a name for that?
Yeah, it's called gin and hot chocolate. I don't know.
Oh, that's like that. That sounds like an unusual pairing that I've never heard of. So I was like, wait, that's a thing. It's like,
I looked it up. I was like, does this make sense? And then I saw some things that says gin pairs well with hot chocolate.
I'm seeing that as well. I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was like, that is the first. Like I used to drink Pendleton and Dr. Pepper because the way the whiskey, like Canadian blended whiskey mixes, Dr. Pepper has so much spice anyway. It was like I would tell people about this, and they were like, "What?" I was like, "This is just a thing."
Ryan thinks this is a Steve drink, but I mean, to me,
drink.
it's not any weirder than it's all. Actually, gin and hot chocolate is like it's ends up working out borderline like hot toddy territory.
I mean, I'm just saying, Steve, I found it on the Gin Society website, so it's a thing.
Yeah. So,
speaking of other topics, though, one of the things that I've noticed that I think is really worth talking about, especially for a lot of the audience, is my gear nades have changed to more reflect my audiences. So, like, I moved from a big apartment where I had a huge dedicated room. I could have 412s. I had like it was a fourplex, so I had hours where nobody was around, so I could get room to store. I mean, I'm as loud as everything can go for half an hour or whatever. But now I'm in a totally different place, and I'm starting to realize, oh, now I see why people want these amp modeling pedals, and they want, I used to use just plugins for years. I gave up on pedals for like 10 years, but it's interesting.
Same, but not for plugins, but same.
But like I use Line 6 stuff, and then but I'm looking at this new Boss thing, and it's so funny because I'm sure as a modeler, the IR2 200 or IR2, the
IR2
compact thing. And because I just love Boss pedals. I think they're the best company that's ever existed for pedals, just for a number of reasons. It's like in the boutique world, you have companies that are now realizing that their switching system is superior to anything that's ever been used. It's like it took us 50 years to realize that back in the 70s, they got it right the first time. That transistor switching with buffers, like obviously you can upgrade parts, but anyway, it's just so realizing, oh, now I see why, like, it takes a little more doing to get these things to sound right, to get a fuzz sound that sounds right, and with a modeler or these like space constraints. Even it's like, oh, I'm sharing this place with a great roommate, but like, oh, all these solutions, like now it makes sense. It's like, yeah, I used to have attenuator and 412 cabs and tube heads, and those things are great, and I highly recommend that if people can, they go that route.
And I'm utterly addicted to them.
Yeah, it's there's nothing that sounds better. Hands down. I mean, you get a plexi into an attenuator, even if you're running it just through studio monitors and playing it in the room, but off a cab, even a quiet, like a cab, relatively quiet. But that's why I'm using a little solid state combo right now because, and that's always been a thing with my demos. But yeah. So can I do a quick story time? So a customer.
Before we hit that,
yeah, go ahead.
We can do story time in a minute. Sorry, I want to
Okay,
double
good.
back to this question because this came up, and I think we were all in something and totally whiffed on it.
I have both models pulled up in other tabs, actually.
I like the RGs personally.
Yeah, honestly, if you're going Ibanez, I say go the RG. I have not played a Geo that I liked as much as any RG. Now, I am not the target audience for Ibanez guitars, but I have played and owned a few of them. And even the low end RGs are good guitars. You're going to end up with some issues if you're a hardcore Floyd user. If you like Floyd Rose tremolos, that one's going to eventually give you issues. But to start with, it's going to be great. You can worry about the wear later.
And the GRG 121 is a hardtail, so you're not going to get any of that.
Oh, yeah. Skip that. You don't go to Ibanez for a hardtail? What are you, crazy?
Yeah. So
you go to Ibanez because you want to dive bomb like Steve Vai.
Oh, man. I had so many Ibanez's trying to be a Satriani and Vai player.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, let's do story time.
Oh, it's just an interesting little anecdote. So during Black Friday, I can see on the back end when someone loads up a cart, even if they don't buy it, it shows like a incomplete order for an amount. And I'm on holiday with the family, and I see an amount pop up, and I'm like, that's like the whole lineup. Someone was basically looking at buying the whole lineup with the coupon. And I was really curious to know who this person was. And so later this week, somebody ended up picking up quite a few. And so I emailed them. I'm like, hey, because I can usually recognize the name or a username, or I can search through and figure out if it's somebody I know of. I was like, how did you hear of the company? And because they left a little note on one of the orders, and I was like, oh, okay. They were just browsing Reverb, and they found fuzz pedals. They found one of mine. They started watching the demos because that was always my thing. I was a demo guy before I ever built anything.
Yeah.
And so I was like, the demos is what sold it. I was like, oh, well, there you go. And I think it's important for any builder. It's like, you got to have at least good audio. Like all the stuff on mine is, Marshalls with an attenuator and, recorded studio audio. And, I still do stuff with the phone and like throw it up in the corner and you can hear the string noise. But it's like good audio for your demos is what gets it done every time. But I never would have thought Reverb as because I don't sell on Reverb, just my dealers do. There's an agreement.
Dealers and used ones, so they'll see them that way
used
and
ones,
discover. Yeah.
But it was crazy that, like, I feel like I worked so hard thinking of what am I going to post today, or what's the good story, or how do I phrase this thing to drive its interest. And it was none of those things is what brought somebody in, but it's kind of all the little stuff, it's all these, and it's exhausting. And one of the things we're talking about comments, because the negative comments, especially if somebody really gets under your skin, it can be hard to turn that off in your brain. But it's a numbers game. Like this happens with customer interactions. There's like 1 in 100, maybe software goes sideways or something goes wrong. 1 in 200, it's a little bit worse of an interaction. You get to where it's like 1 in 3,000. Sometimes that interaction can like scar you,
Yes.
So it's just a numbers game as a creator. The longer you're in it, you're going to have that 1 in 3,000, 1 in 5,000, 1 in 10,000 interaction. And thankfully there's not too many of them, but it's just, it can really take people out. Like you talked about company heads, and people see things and get really worked up, and they can't just, it feels like a personal attack, and sometimes it really is, but it's hard to separate the person from the business when it's a small shop.
For sure. And I think, going kind of back, it's funny is you see brands kind of for better or worse kind of rehab their image, also using social media. Brands that have kind of been able to shake off a lot of potentially or some legitimately bad things, some of which are old enough to kind of almost be lost to the annals of the internet kind of a thing. But,
I think I know who you're talking about already.
But I'm thinking of a couple different brands that are both kind of
I could
on
give
the
it some
same
examples,
path, but
but they're friends. We're not going to talk about it. But
Yeah, exactly. I can think of one that has absolutely shifted their image entirely, like, and we all know who I think we all know who I'm talking about, but like to the point that like they are beloved, or there was a time when they were absolutely hated. So,
no, so you're not talking. I'm assuming you're not talking about JHS.
that's absolutely who I'm talking about.
Oh, it is. Okay.
That's absolutely who I'm talking about. Because he went through a couple of controversies, of several of which were not of his own making.
right.
But he went through several controversies, and he turned it around using YouTube completely to now. And I was actually having this conversation yesterday. He is the biggest influencer in this industry.
Oh yeah.
Nobody moves pedals the way Josh Scott does.
Well, and I saw somebody complain yesterday that about like,
and we started talking. I'm so excited about it.
Why are the Ross pedals so expensive? I saw that comment somewhere.
Oh God.
And the reissue stuff is relatively pricey, but like this person just, I don't think, followed the Ross trends over the years, and the fact that a vintage Ross compressor is $1,000, which is insane.
They have been for a long time. Trey.
Whereas right now you can buy a new one for $141.75 on Sweetwater.
Yeah.
It's on sale. Buy it. I mean, yeah. So I'm pumped. That means I need to buy something from you before you talk
before the JHS effect.
Yeah, before the JHS effect. That new one sounds interesting. I don't own an HM2 in any variety, shape, or form.
Yeah, and it's not a 1-for-1 because I think clones, and that's something I've noticed too in pedals, and I almost went too far where building a brand story when you're creating unique things, it can be hard to explain to someone what this is. So like my creature pedal, I'll be like, oh, this is what I think it does and what it is. In pedals, there's so many traditional kind of trends. It's just like with guitars, like there's lots of Les Pauls and Strats and Tellys, right? And there's a reason. It's because that's what people buy. If you want to do something unique, it may or may not have any traction. Like players will complain about all the clones, but then that's what they buy.
Right.
So
I've talked about this so many times. I talked about it with Mike Trombley too from Native Audio, and Mike's a freaking genius, right? I love his pedals. I love his switching system that he's built in there. I think he's making great things. And then he was doing well. Then he finally decided, oh, well, I haven't done it under Native Audio. He had done it under his prior name, obviously. And he finally puts out a 3-knob overdrive. Biggest selling pedal he's ever put out. Instant. People complain about, oh, how many more 3-knob overdrives do we need? Obviously more, because when people put them out, they become their best-selling pedal.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah.
One more.
Oh, yeah. And distortions and all you can go down the whole line. But I think Sender 5 was born out of my frustration with the muff market. And I owned a bubble font for a while. And those things, they have the worst construction outside of the case. But man, they sound like there's a reason they sell for $400 or $500 sometimes. It's like those Russian muffs are no joke as far as sound wise.
Yeah.
Well, on the clone thing, I was just gonna say, you don't need to clone the HM2. Boss still makes an HM2.
Well, when they reissued it took a lot of those off the market because before they were selling for a good Japan one was $300.
Right. Now
the market's softened to where people are barely able to get $250 for a clean one with box, where that wasn't the case. And that has definitely changed the market. And that's why I didn't want to do a straight up one, because every builder has always acknowledged, it's like, well, now that Boss makes it again, it's like,
right, do your thing.
I think Ryan sold an HM2 as the market. He bought one real cheap. If he's still in the chat, maybe he'll chime in, but I think he bought one real cheap and sold it as the market was rising, but still like a couple of years before it peaked.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'll flip that one a little too early there.
Okay, I'm looking at Reverb right now. A Boss HM2 black label It claims Black Label. I need to look at it and confirm. Oh, we won't look at that one because that's a brand new seller that looks like a spoof. This isn't Japan. This is a Taiwanese made 109.
Yeah, I've sold mine for 150-ish. I had a Japan. I
Yeah.
like the Taiwan the best, besides the new one. The new one's great when
Yeah.
you get a feel for it. But it's funny because I didn't like the sound of it for the longest time, but it makes a good fuzz. You turn the mids down, so the high control is high mid. You turn that and make it scoopy. It's basically an op amp muff with more bass. So you can get these really musical sounds, but I like the EQ.
Yeah, the EQ is really powerful.
Yeah, it's nice. It works good in guitar.
Back, you were talking about the IR2. To me, the most impressive thing about the IR2 has nothing to do with what it does. Somehow, Boss fit 9 jacks on a compact pedal. I don't know which one went.
Every time they do those things, that's like, just looking at it, I was like, I want that. Because it has that familiarity of a Boss pedal, but it does the thing that I've been thinking about buying something for.
9 jacks. They fit 2 TRS, 2 TS, or on each side, 2 total TRS. It's got USB. It's got a headphone mini jack and your power jack. That doesn't make any sense. There can't be anything inside.
Yeah, the engineers at Boss are... It still blows my mind. If you look at the inside of an RV2, which was the first digital reverb pedal that people bought, there was ones that came before, but the first compact, it's as advanced as some stuff that still comes out because it's dual layer board, had a custom chip that they made just for that. They lost money on that chip probably.
Yep.
Like all these things, and it's like, they would spend 10 engineers, 20 engineers spending 3 years developing products. So it's like, but they make them look user friendly. I think that's the whole thing about Boss. They're kind of sleepers because you think, oh, it's just a Boss pedal. Like even a DS1, like a DS1, we used to get them for under $20. It was like the Behringer of its day, because they were so cheap. But the circuit design's super advanced. They're super reliable. They don't break easily. It's like they just did it. They did it before, and it totally changed the market for pedals at the time. And Josh has talked about it a lot.
Years ago, back when it was really easy to like flip stuff. One of the pieces of advice that I would give a lot, and I got this from someone else, was that if you see a DS1 for $20 or less, just buy it.
Yes.
And
I did that for a long time.
Yeah. And then when you go to like, oh, I'm selling this guitar, I bought a guitar cheap, I want to flip it, I want to give it a little extra, whatever. You want to like sweeten the pot a little. Hey, I'm selling this, Epiphone G400 with DS1. And all of a sudden, like it became that much more attractive than all the other G400s out there for the same price. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to get my like little upcharge here, and I'm really only going to lose $20 on the DS1.
Right.
I tried to. That was also around the same time that I had this idea in my head that I would just start modding and flipping DS1s that way.
Yeah.
I did mod 3 of them, but I don't think I realized that I was way too time consuming for me to ever make money on it.
So Steve, you said, oops, all jacks, new pedal idea. First of all, don't say that anywhere that Grant can hear you, because also I'm pretty sure you just described modular synthesis.
That's true. That is a synthesizer, basically.
I see people getting into it. I was like, that's too big brain even for me. It's like, I love pedal electronics, but
can't see it over here in the corner, but I've got the Moog
grandmother probably.
No, it's the subsequent 37.
Which
by the way, y'all, apparently they're discontinuing, so you better buy them now if you want. I saw one on Musician's Friend's Stupid Deal of the Day for $12.99 the other day. So but I can't wrap my brain around like all the jacks and the modular synthesis. I need something that I can just download patches and play, because I have no idea what the knobs on that damn thing do. I don't know. I just know that it makes cool sounds.
Yeah. No, my dad. I was talking to my dad. A customer emailed in about my Machina pedal, which is the most complicated pedal I make, and it's a percolator and a fuzz factory. So on each side, they're to be really reductive, but the customer was having a hard time dialing it in, and I made a lot of videos, and it's like, man, I was talking to my dad. I was like, so what you're telling me is you made a pedal that only sound guys can use because that's one of my gigs. It's like,
Oh yeah.
it's like this perfectly encapsulates like what pedal builders do sometimes, especially the really engineer-minded ones that are
Right.
masters of electrical engineering, is they make these things that are like it's designed the way they intended it, but for an average player, it's just like what it doesn't do the thing. And it's surprising how many things in guitar is like you want new, modern, advanced things, but you want them to be extremely easy to use. It's
Yep.
like,
100%.
and that is a like I think that is the mark of a good design is that you can just look at it and figure it out. I
Right.
think I've tried to do that. Like I don't include manuals with any of my stuff. I have lots of videos. I think a video is better than any manual ever will be. It's like I'll just
I
send you a
go to
link.
video long before I go to a manual every time.
Right. Yeah, because it's just if a picture's worth 1,000 words, how much is a video worth if it's a 10-minute video, you know?
Right. You ought to include just a card that has like a QR code that takes you directly to the video.
I
I think
showed
that
this
would be the
earlier,
way.
but this one, unfortunately, this is the Yellow Cake Psychotropia.
Uh-huh.
There's only like 3 videos out there,
Right.
and I can't figure out. I mean,
Well, it
I
sounds
think
like you need to make a video,
I think
Steve.
I understand what it's doing now. I will probably have to consult a manual on that one. One of those videos is Ryan sitting down with Ryan from Yellow Cake, and having him explain the pedal. But the problem is because it was at NAMM, Ryan Burke, he's listening to what he's playing, and then the Ryan from Yellow Cake is just turning knobs and saying what the knobs do.
Yeah.
But it's kind of chaotic, which is part of the curse of trying to make demos at NAMM in general, particularly when the person who's trying to explain the function of the product isn't also the person playing the instrument.
Yeah.
So
I have an issue. This is where I am with I feel the same way about, and I love them, but y'all know I say this out of love for them, but I've just Chase Bliss pedals aren't for me. They were not designed for me. I say that having the 2 automaton pedals right now. The reason I have those is everything's on top. Everything is very clearly laid out. I don't have to, there's no menu, there's no dip switches, there's nothing. It's all right there on top. I also have the Gen Loss Mark II, and that thing is just hieroglyphics to me. I get the gist of it, but like once you start messing with switches and everything, I'm like, I don't know. I can't remember what all this does.
One thing I'll say I'm glad I made this call. I was going to put out a DSP pedal. It's been working with my roommate who's really experienced with it. But Ryan put out that A-Labs video, and I was like, dude, this is going to change for so many builders. Like, if they're able to get that $99 price point with that level of features, like I know how much it costs for me to put out a FE1 pedal or whatever. It's like almost $70 cost per.
Yeah.
It's like, so you have to charge 200 to do what you're supposed to do with it. But it's like they have more features than mine would if we went through with kind of how it is. And it's like it's one of those spaces that's so competitive. Even though people will ask me, "Oh, you should do a reverb, bro. You should do this," or it's like. And I used to just point like I do a delay pedal now, a PT chip one, but it was like just go buy a Boss like a DD3 is like $70, $80 used. It's like it's the best digital delay that's ever existed for that cheap, you know.
Yeah.
And they but then seeing stuff like this, like with the ramping through the flip switch, and I was like, it's for the small builder stuff, it's like you can't compete with scale when it comes to digital.
100.
And the thing about digital is it's not as proprietary as something analog. You have your specific components you've sourced out and pieced together. Like someone could try and clone your pedal, but they might not have chips from that batch or
Yeah.
caps from that batch that's going to get that sound as you were playing and designing them. But with a digital thing, it's all a program. So it's like, and you know, hot take, but multi-mode reverbs, delays, and choruses, other than little bits of varying quality, I see them as interchangeable for me. It's like I want a reverb that's got some modulation that's this and that. It's like, okay, like I can go get a reverb that does, I can get an RV5 that has
Yeah.
the modulated reverb that I like, but there's still competition in that space, but I think you gotta have the money. It all comes down to the money.
The A-Lab stuff is really interesting. I'm really interested in seeing kind of, I don't want to say what they do next. Their first product sets were, they have like one headphone that looks pretty nice. It's one of these fancy wood headphones, and I don't even think they're that expensive, which is kind of an interesting thing with them. They have a microphone set, so at first glance they kind of just look like a lot of other import brands that are doing knockoff or semi knockoff of other products. But these guitar pedals are, I mean, some of the functions, that whole function with like the hold and the memory hold thing with the knobs, I if somebody else is doing that, I've not seen it.
Right.
TC does something that's similar with some of the stuff, because I did a beta test for the Plethora for TC, and it had something that was similar. Seeing that company take a beating during and post COVID. So as I'm talking with the engineers, people started dropping out. They're like, "Oh, well, this person's taking over now because I got laid off. This person's taking over. I got laid off."
Oh wow!
But yeah, this is whatever they're using. I mean, it's arm chips or Shark or something. That's like that's not what everybody else in the pedal space is using. Like they're using it. They're doing it the new modern smart way, and it's going to be really hard to compete with that unless you have. But you look at what's great about digital though is I'm looking at these 4 pedals. It's one pedal, and they flash it with the program. But just to get that all set up, to get a board that works perfectly in the scale of it's like, you're looking at to replicate something like this, you have to have somebody that can code, and 50 grand, 20, 30, 50 grand.
Well, and A-Labs is also doing the thing that, that Ryan and I have talked about for a long time. Now, A-Labs is based out of Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what the manufacturing, so I don't know if they're making them there, but their whole thing is that they are, quote, music geeks from Singapore. Now that I think about it, is BandLab based in Singapore? Am I getting that? Yeah, BandLab is based in Singapore. So there is like guitar culture there. These are likely people who probably really understand how to tap into the manufacturing world of Southeast Asia. But they're also, what we see with these pedals is, again, something that's pretty unique in the pedal space right now, and at $99.
Yeah.
I think for better or worse, I don't know if it's better or if it's worse. It can be debated. I know a lot of people just think that these are Walrus knockoffs because of the graphic design direction that they went. Which maybe that's, again, I don't, you can argue either way.
There's some inspiration there, but looking at the feature sets, there's no Walruses that do this.
No, and that's 100%. These are unique circuits, or at least relatively unique circuits. You're not gonna. I don't think you're gonna go on Amazon 6 months from now and see the Flamma version of this and the 15 other brands. Whereas outside of the Joyo R series and their,
which I love, I think those are great.
The rest of the Joyo stuff is kind of like shared circuits with Moore and Flamma and everybody else.
Well, it's all one big factory. So all these places, because I talked to a friend of mine that had looked into it. There's a company called Elica. Then they used to sell stuff under Elica branding, which is great. If you remember Deadbeat Audio, they were selling Yeah, they were made by Elica.
Oh, okay.
A lot of these other brands are, and they specialize in turnkey. And so, you come to them with, I want a delay, a chorus, a trem, and a
Mm-hmm.
reverb. But this stuff, even if it's not this brand that takes over the market, the fact that this is even possible right now just is an indicator of where the market's going. It's like people don't want to pay $300 for less features
Yeah.
and less options. And I think that's the challenge to the boutique space is even if you've got great algorithms and great products, you can't rest on your laurels in the digital space. And Chase Bliss has constantly been pushing the envelope. I think he was talking about, Phil was talking about the just like Mood and GenLoss, how they have all these switches. Like they made themselves virtually clone proof. I mean, there
Yeah.
could be someone really enterprising, but uh, they're going to keep pushing the envelope. But there's a certain amount of other companies that are resting on their laurels when it comes to this kind of product that I
Yeah.
think they're going to get slowly phased out of the market. But that's why I'm just going to mostly focus on my drive pedals because if history has taught us anything, it's
Singapore. It's a musical place.
yeah,
It's got sing in the name.
yeah.
I
Well,
just
there you go.
made me
That
laugh.
was very
No,
relevant.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Well, it's like rack units used to be. My friend has a great anecdote working in Seattle music stores in the mid '80s. Players would be bringing in Plexis and 60s Les Pauls to trade for Elisa's rack gear.
Right.
I want to go back to those times, and I want to work in a music store.
Yeah, he said he could have got a Black Beauty like a 60 for 4,500 in the mid '90s, like
To your
pre eBay.
going
years,
back to like a comment that you just made too, with Chase Bliss, I think at least now, maybe it'll eventually change. I don't know. I need to find a way to back my camera up because I keep making hand gestures, but they're below the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think anybody who is going to sit down with a Chase Bliss pedal and reverse engineer it, if they are good enough to reverse engineer it, they're not interested in reverse engineering.
There you go.
They're
If they're
more
good enough to
interested-
reverse
there you
engineer it,
go.
they can make their own thing.
They're
And
gonna
they'll just work for them. I mean, like you were talking about, was it Strymon? And then there's Maris, and it was line 6.
Yeah.
And then the designers, they just kept moving down with their own companies. So
Disaster Audio before that.
Yeah.
And
Maris is so what Disaster is at the drive-in.
Yeah.
Maris is the Mars Volta, and Strymon is Sparta.
Yeah.
Fair. That's fair.
No, it's just interesting as and as podcasters and influencers, you get to kind of get a feel. And there's so many other industries. I worked for a place that makes dental equipment, and before that, I worked at like a fab house that did assembly and sheet metal stuff. And it's like the way manufacturing works is not how people think it is. You could have brands that are competing that are made in the same.
Yeah.
Like there's this line and there's a line over here, and even when it comes to pedal companies, most brands and owners, even if they have products that are similar, like if you're seeing it as direct competition, it's you got it wrong. It's a big pie. There's lots of pie for everybody. I'm not taking someone else's pie and they're not taking mine.
Right. This isn't zero sum.
And for the most part, that ends up benefiting, even again, going back to kind of the beginning of the conversation, some of the brands that are the public facing side can get dicey because the guy who should not be the face of the company, but wants to post whatever he wants. Like behind the scenes, that guy is one of the most respected dudes in the industry because he's super helpful because it's a very collaborative space. And I can just I know one of the bigger stories is a lot of companies when they want to do DSP and they get stuck, they call the Keeley guys, and the Keeley guys say, "Oh yeah, this is what we've done to like solve. We've run into that problem. Here's what we've done to solve it."
So
I
I
have
had
a
to,
friend
Very
who ghost DSPs for like he can't even tell me. Like I'll ask around it, and because he's like, I have NDAs, I can't tell you. But it was like there's like 10 reverb designers or whatever in the world, so that are that good
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can be on a Strymon pedal or in a
yeah.
Walrus pedal or in a Keeley, and so it's
I mean,
like,
I had an idea for a pedal that turned out to already exist. I found out I couldn't find it when
oh yeah,
it was a utility thing. It wasn't an actual pedal.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
what did I do? I reached out to Rick Matthews because Rick
mm.
knows what he's doing on the digital side of things. And Rick proceeded to give me a guy he had never met. I had Blake facilitate an introduction. And then Rick proceeded to give me the rundown of, well, you need to be able to do this. You need to be able to do this. You need to be able to do this. Here's the order you need to learn these things. And he said, now here's the resources. Here's absolutely, he said, let me know if you need any more help. I was like, damn it. Just some dude he doesn't know asked him, hey, I have this idea. He's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
then you need to do this. And just gave me the
Yeah.
rundown. I
you know
love
what blew my mind the other day?
what's that?
That's I think that was him. It was on the ZBEX Instagram account. Was sitting there soldering racks of lo-fi junkies, and
Mm.
I was like, handmade ones, and I was like, because you would think, being that deep into the industry, you can use production houses and do all the things, and it's like,
Yeah.
and there is for some of their products that is the case, like for Vector series and other things, but
Yeah. Well, that was the point of
like,
those, was to make them more affordable.
right, and then I'm like, oh, you're doing this because you love it. It's not because you don't have better things to do. It's because you really love making pedals,
Yeah.
and I think that's what sometimes gets lost. And even at times, I'll go through financial things or, just mental health things that come from, I think every musician ever goes through these phases where you don't have creativity or life is kicking your butt, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, it's like we're doing this because we love it, not just for money or because of whatever. It's like, no, there's
I
a
mean,
reason why we do it,
I'm a
And it's like,
librarian in my day job. I do a lot of things not for the money. Let's just be honest.
yeah.
I got to meet Zachary Vex at Fretboard Summit in August,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, it was very brief. It wasn't like I got to sit down, but he was actually at a booth at Fretboard Summit, just hanging out, talking about his pedals. I was like, that dude is like, I know we talk about like the early days of boutique builders, but he is the early days of boutique
Yeah.
builders. Like
Yeah.
he's
It was
the
him and
OG.
Full Tone head
Yeah.
to head, and that was the start of American Boutique. That we
Yeah.
all pay homage to those guys, and we wouldn't have careers without them.
Yeah.
For sure.
We'd still just be playing, Boss and Arion pedals, which nothing wrong with that. But
Right.
an MXR, I guess they'd still be around. But
But like, I was at the music store the other day, and a guy was shopping for his like high school age kid, and was looking for a distortion pedal and like something else, and I ended up helping him find some pedals. But he
Mhm.
was saying that his high school age kid just got really into grunge. They call it grunge, but alt rock of the 90s. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's amazing because that's all pedal driven music. Like, I am here for it. This is just going to, the new generation is interested in pedals even remotely. The guitar culture sometimes can kind of eat itself. Like talk about your forums and things when people are just mean to each other, or the
Yeah.
gatekeeping, and kind of ragging on people's setups. It's like, no, we want everybody that has a remote interest to be into this so that we get the new gear, that we get the new music, that we keep this thing moving forward. The more people that are interested, the better.
yeah, it's an interesting thing on that getting into older music. I saw a video this week of a teacher who is, I think she was the third grade teacher, and she was videoing her. She didn't video the class, thankfully. She had that kind of class, but she did ask her class,
Mhm.
what's that song you were singing? And they started singing Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the
Oh
World.
my gosh.
And they
Great
knew
song.
every lyric. It's because this music is starting to creep into video games. It's like all this older
Yeah.
music. I think we're going to see it more and more and more for a couple of reasons. One, it's legacy music, and so it's out
Yeah.
there readily available, maybe a more available for sync licensing. Two, it's recognizable. And I think we're going to get into an age. Actually, I feel like we're there. The music that's come out, I'd say 8 years ago to now, is going to be less recognizable when it's as old as Tears for Fears is, because of the just ocean of music it all gets released in, and it's harder for something to be so identifiable.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's kind of weird. Like, I feel like it's also the way that a lot of the social media is built.
Yeah.
The TikTok clips, these memeable songs, a lot of them are kind of these songs from like back in the day. Like, I think when I was like 14, I don't think that there were a ton of songs from that came out before I was born that I was like, I'm gonna like listen to this. But when I talk to my kid, my 14-year-old, about like, oh, what are you listening to? There's a lot of stuff that I don't know, that I just learned. But every once in a while, it's like she knows Seven Nation Army.
Yeah.
I don't know what the equivalent to Seven Nation Army. Like, what year did that song come out? Like 2004?
Oh, 2, 3, 4, something like that.
You keep going, I'll find it.
2003. So that song came out 20 years ago. So when I was 14, what song came out in 1978 that I would be like, this song is on my playlist? There isn't one. I don't even know.
The Grange was right around there.
So
but I wasn't listening to ZZ Top when I was 14. I was listening to pop punk and only pop punk and ska. I wanted that mozzarella stick music.
You know that I posted it a bunch because it made me laugh so hard. I'm in the top 0.3% of Smash Mouth listeners when I got
love it. Love it.
Because I've gone through this renaissance of new wave, which is the Tears for Fears and all that, and early 90s alt rock, when it's the ska movement, and so you have Two Princes is like in my top 10. Fine Young Cannibals, She Drives Me Crazy is in top like 7, and so it's like, this is the kind of stuff that I'm getting more drawn to, because it just, the production value, there's like a timeless aspect to this music that was just good. Like, this was the best song of that month in that year, and it's a reason why it's a good song.
So Steve, I'm really curious about this now, because I would have been 14 in 1975, right?
Okay.
But technically I turned 14 in December of 74, but most of that year is 75. So it's like, I mean, I would have been 14 in 1995. So 20 years before that's 1975. Sorry, that was the hard math, and I haven't been trying. So let's look and see what would the number one songs of 1975. So I'm really curious about this. Rhinestone Cowboy by Glenn Campbell. Elton John appears a couple of times with Philadelphia Freedom, and where did the other one go? I just missed it. Oh, Benny and the Jets was 1974.
Okay.
Let's see. This is interesting to see, because these songs would not make my playlists either as a 14-year-old. I would definitely have not been listening to, Boogie on Reggae Woman by Stevie Wonder. I love Stevie Wonder. That's not making my list.
The number one song of 1975, which I'm sure you already have open.
Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain and
Keep Us Together, Captain and Tennille. Like,
there's a YouTube video, you gotta watch it. It's the top song of every month from 1980 to now.
Oh my
God.
God.
It's just like 10 seconds or less of each song.
Yeah.
But you see this progression of all those genres, and there's some surprising entries that were either one-hit wonders. And I study a lot of music history and trying to learn more about things before my time. But like Elton John is a big one. Mariah Carey has had like more. There's all the MJ stuff, but then there's that transition where just for like 6 months there was Guns N' Roses and hard rock was like the number one thing in the world, and then it switches back into alt rock. It's the new wave stuff. In the early 90s, it was like what actually was the number one song was constantly changing, because it was just a violently active output in music in general.
Well, I think that plays back into a lot of the I'm trying to think of what like a good year, maybe 19. Let's drop back to 1970, and I'll throw this up.
All right.
It might not show up very well, but
I'm gonna
we'll see.
pull it up as well. Oh, number one song of 1970. Oh yeah,
Bridge Over Troubled Water. The reason I brought up 1970 is, you hear a lot of these conversations now and this is actually a decent list. But you hear these conversations like, oh, music sucks now. Like, look at the pop radio now. And I see where, like, from a musical standpoint, you could probably make some arguments that this is like a technically musical, like some of these songs are pretty technical, but like also Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head is number 4. Like, come on.
The folk movement in the early 70s was some of the worst. Folk and disco were some of the worst eras for guitar music of all time.
But there's still great stuff. Like Steve, I was just
there's good stuff.
Looking at this list, these are more what would have been on my 14-year-old playlist than
that's
75.
I mean, there's some songs on here that are great, but also the Beatles is only at number 9. If you if you go into a guitar forum and you say what are the best songs of 1970, you're going to get Zeppelin. You're going to be like, oh, the Beatles, Hendrix. Yeah. The only true rock song in the top 10 is American Woman.
Yeah.
War. I guess you could argue that War was a rock song.
Yeah.
But then very, very controversial that we like to complain about all the time, the guitar world in general, is that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like, why is Eminem in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? He's not rock and roll.
Oh man, don't get me started.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stopped being rock and roll in like 1986.
I won't say that, but yes, I get where you're going.
Have you ever
I don't agree with
it?
the statement, but I understand with the idea.
I mean, Otis Redding was one of the first inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Marvin Gaye, I think, was second year or third year.
So
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying, like.
But looking at this list, I'm gonna come back to this list though for just a second. You say rock and roll, so like in the top 10, sure, rock and roll was never the number one music genre.
No, and that's my only point.
So you get through the Guess Who, obviously. You get I actually don't know who Rare Earth is. I think that's a rock band. You've got Edwin Starr, Beatles. Then you get into the teens. You got Three Dog Night. You got Bread. You got Sly and the Family Stone, which yes, that's soul, but they rock harder than a lot of bands that were called rock and roll. Then you get down into the 20s. You've got Free. Stevie Wonder makes an appearance, which is not rock and roll, but come on. Then you get down to Creedence Clearwater Revival, the Beatles again, the Jaggers, which is a band I've never heard of that has a song called The Rapper, which is not Rapper's Delight, so I don't know what that is. I need to look that up.
The Jaggers were a rock band, but I don't remember what The Rapper was.
Yeah, it was number 1 at one point. So then you got the Hollies, Badfinger. I mean, then you get into the rock and roll stuff. So it's here.
For sure. Is it the 69 list that I'm thinking of? Yes. When people talk about bad music, they forget that in 1969, the number 1 song for the year 1969 was a band that did not exist.
There you go.
It was a band that was created to sell comic books.
It's the TikTok anthems, like viral hits of the 60s. It's like nothing has changed. Like the meme song that blows up on TikTok. You know what was crazy to me that I was really excited about? So we hopped in the truck for work. I work with my dad doing cabinets sometimes.
Yeah.
And the Joe Diffie Post Malone collab comes on a Pickup Man, which is a 90s, like late 80s, 90s country banger.
Dude, and that intro riff is so good. And the solo,
all those Mason. Oh man. All that, and Brent Mason was some of that stuff back in the day. I don't know if he was on that one, but
he was. I specifically learned that intro because it's a Brent Mason lick.
Yeah, you like that? I didn't even know. There you go. You can just guess. Like the top 200 songs of his era are all him. Like
yeah, exactly, 100%.
Yeah, but seeing Post Malone. I mean, Post Malone has a great voice. I'm a huge fan. I think he's doing great things for the music community, like guitar wise and stuff. But like that's one of my other favorite music eras is that like people the Nashville players were playing either deluxes or like plugging in DI. A lot of
Yeah.
it was DI or rack gear. And the riffs and the sounds, and it's like the songwriting was what sold it. Like country music has taken there's still some good stuff out there, but
It's not what's on the radio, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's not. No,
I had that
there's
conversation also. There's amazing country music out there right now, but it is not going to be on your local hit country radio station.
Right.
You're going to have to dig for it.
But to hear that come up it's probably like the #1 song this week or whatever. It's going like popping off fast. But it was like, oh, this is from my favorite era of country with a like Post Malone's not even 30 yet, I don't think. I think he's like 29 or 28.
Yeah, I don't know how old he is.
I'd have to. I'm guessing. I remember. I thought he was my age, but he's a couple years younger. Yeah. And so you know, a 28
hasn't played a Dumble.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Oh man. I want that one. I want the Dumble that the Wangs guy, Jeff sent Ryan the clone, the really good repro.
Oh, the Grand. Yeah. The only thing I'll say about those, and I think Ryan may have covered this in his video, they're all shipping with a mismatched tube set. So if you decide to invest in one of those, they are not cheap. They are cheap compared to a Dumble, but they are not cheap. Also be prepared to shell out the extra like $200 within a week of. I think Ryan turned his on and it died almost immediately.
That's not a fair comparison, though, Steve. My 2-Rocks are cheap compared to a Dumble.
I was just about to say the 2-Rock that I can see in the background. That's a perfect example. It's like and train wreck clones and all that stuff.
Or a train wreck. You can still buy a train wreck. You can still order one. They're expensive.
Well, Ken's not alive.
No, but his I think it's his son is still building them. So they're still his circuits. They're still made by some of the same folks that were making them. It's just not Ken.
I learned about all that from Brad Paisley back when I got obsessed when he put out Play, which was like 06, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When his instrumental album, which was a huge move at the time for him because he was a like top 40 singer-songwriter. To put out an instrumental guitar album at the time was a huge deal.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited because Dr. Z just started selling them. They put out a demo video just a couple days ago of the Z80.
The Z80, yeah.
100. Like, man, it sounds so good. I want that. Like, I don't need that. I live in a 700 square foot apartment. I don't need I don't need 100 watt. Well, it's 80 watt, like cathode, how it works. But like Michael, that through a 412, I would blow windows out, which I probably would do because that's the kind of person I am. But it was just such a cool thing. Like everything he does is like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, Amplified Nation does a demo clone. What's the other company? Is it the Amp Club?
There's a Cherrytone. Cherrytone will sell you something real similar. And you can build it.
There's some bigger names out there too. Like Blutotone's a big one for a long time. Basically, just go on to the gear page, and they're going to be super cork sniffery about all of them. And don't get me wrong, I realize that I too am a little cork sniffery. I have things I like. I mean. It's a whole thing, but I also the Dr. Z thing. Yeah, Fuchs does them. Red Plate. That was the other one I was trying to think of. Thank you, Richard. And they're going to all have their pluses and minuses depending on what you want to say. But I had a Dr. Z Maz 18 for a while that I gigged, and I don't know that I've actually ever played better amps. I've only played different amps because Dr. Z stuff is incredible. That Z80 has me real amped up, but you know what it's got me amped up for? Not the Z80. It's got me thinking about the Z-Rec again. And
yeah, the Z-Rec. I was going to do the Cherrytone one, and I was going to buy a real one. But the thing is, it sucks about, you would think like being a pedal company or a gear person, I would have all this gear, but it's like the cost to launch a new product comes out to like what it costs to buy a cool piece of gear. So it's like, do I continue my company? Do I buy more equipment? So there'll come a day when I can have all the toys, but it's like, oh man, every time I'm like, I want that, but also 2 new pedal launches this year.
Yeah, totally fair. That is your priority, and it should be, because that's what you do.
It just sucks sometimes. Like, we were talking about my Jazzmaster build earlier. It's like, because I have this thing, the trash caster. I don't have it here. I'm visiting my folks, but it's swimming pool route, and I bolt all my pickups on it, like all in a row. Like it's completely filled, the whole cavity, because it's a Invader neck pickup, a P90, a Tele pickup that's jammed underneath both the other pickups so that it fits, and then a humbucker in the bridge. So it's a PAF. So you've got this, and it's switching and stuff. But it was like I only have one guitar right now. I need it to do everything and test for noise floor and how does it just respond to this pickup. But I was like, I want this, but a Jazzmaster.
Right.
Fair. That's fair. I still
want an
by what I
aluminum
said.
build too.
I say
The
build
aluminum
it
stuff is
piece
cool.
by piece as you find deals
Yeah.
on things. That's the trick. And don't
Yeah,
be
I saw this black Strat. Somebody had a white bound neck, like an ebony board on a black Strat, black pickguard, white pick. So David Gilmour with the bound neck.
Yeah.
And I was like, now I want that. You just see something, you're like,
I have gotten to a point. I'm having to get to a point because I've let myself indulge. My problem is that I've done this whole gear flipping thing for 20 years now, and I've gotten pretty good at it. And so I'm pretty good at buying and selling high. So it's this snowball effect over 20 years. That's how I got into gear like this.
Yeah.
I'm not spending new prices for this stuff.
Sure.
I'm trading into I don't know what that. Anyway, I'm trading into this stuff, and so, but you get to a point where it's like I've tried almost everything I've ever really wanted. And I've, come to I made a list of every amp I've ever owned. I don't recommend this if you're like me who have flipped gear for 20 years. It's almost at 70 amps over the course of 20 years I've had. And that was for 15 years of only owning 1 or 2 amps at a time. That was just constant flipping. So I think at some point, so I'm like, you're at this point where you're like, oh, I really like that. And I kind of want that now. I'm starting on the other side of that hill now where I'm like, I don't have any interest in that. I've tried something similar and it didn't do it for me. And I've tried something similar to that. It didn't do it for me. It's
working in stores. I used to work in stores. I started when I was 12. I'm 33. So I started when I was 12, got my first guitar for Christmas, which is a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted an Xbox so bad. I was like, I opened the first box from opening presents and it was a gig bag. And I was like, oh no, this is not an Xbox. I am not getting an Xbox for Christmas. I can't play Halo with my friends. This is bullshit. And so, and it was a guitar and it took to it. But yeah, I flipped a lot because I was always obsessed with gear almost more than playing live or doing anything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was more into pedals and guitars. It's like guitars in the hundreds. Because when you're at a store, something walks in. When you're like behind the counter, something walks in. I can split the difference between what they paid and what we would sell it for. And trading stuff is like, oh, this is still on the wall. Here, let me bring this other one back. So that 2 years of that, just doing it part time, it was like, you get a feel for all these different guitars. And I think I think the secret is cheap guitars, really good pedals, the most expensive amp that does like the best sounding amp doesn't have to be the most expensive, but the best sounding amp that you could possibly afford. I think is the secret to the good signal chain.
For sure.
Like good, great, best, and that seems to be the path that makes the most sense for me.
Yeah.
But right now I'm using the Bandit, and it's great because at low volumes it still sounds good.
Dude, PV Bandit. So that's the thing about being an audio engineer. I was an audio engineer in a pretty popular blues club for 3 years, and saw a lot of bands come through. Got to know a lot of the folks, and you start to know people's gear, and you get all these varying, skill levels come in, and so and it didn't stop me from wanting boutique gear and like trying things out. But there was a day where we had this guy come in with a Squire Strat and a freaking PV Bandit, like an 80s PV Bandit, not the 90s. No. It was like the early 90s, the trans tube PV Bandits. Do you remember those?
Yeah, I have the earlier one. I have the white stripe ones.
Yes, I've seen those, but this guy came in with the trans tube, which is objectively a shittier version of the Bandit, and he sounded godlike.
It was Jeff Healey. That's why. No,
No, it was not Jeff Healey. But he
did used to play Squires famously. That was one of his
he did. I
things.
remember. But he just came in, he tweaked it, and no pedals, just guitar, PV Bandit. Some of the best guitar tone I've ever heard in my life. And
Yep.
there's that thing. And if that's, I've always argued that it isn't always about the tone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's about what excites you to play.
Yeah.
If that's what gets you excited to play, you'll play better. Period.
For sure.
And that's always going to be it. So find the thing that gets you excited to play. Some folks can go out there with like the cheapest guitar they found, the cheapest amp they found, and like I don't know, they'll play a blues gig with like the grittiest, like most high gain distortion they can find, and they'll just dial it back. And that makes them excited to do that, and they play well.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I were that person. I tell people all the time, I wish I were a modeler person. I wish modelers were exciting for me to play, because I could save a whole shit ton of money. I could save so much money.
I think I get ear fatigue with, like, I rocked Line 6 stuff for a long time for practicality. When the HD series came out, like, I was playing gigs with the JBL Eon and a little mini mixer and a HD 500, and that was like the perfect rig, because two hands, you have a whole rig that can do anything virtually, and over a XLR, it's better than a SM57 placed not where it's going to sound good. So it's like, I was like, this is it. And then I got into drums and it plateaued on guitar and these things, and it's like but it's what excites you, because I think over time it was just like I would buy all these guitars and I never changed out the HD 500. So I went through like 50 guitars running it through the same rig.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I never once thought to get a different amp, because at the time I didn't know about attenuators, and I'm trying to run big tube amps in my little room at the time, and it sounded like not good. Yeah. And so it's like, and that was my whole debate for people to get modelers, was like, you have a Mesa triple rec in your 10x10 room that's barely on, like nothing's getting pushed. The preamp's not even getting pushed that hard. And you're like, oh, and it doesn't sound that good. It's like,
you also just don't in a space that small. You also kind of lack the room volume that you need to even have like any sort of tonal bloom. I mean, you can, this amp right here, it's that's a 2.8 watt amp, tube amp. It's a satellite Gamatron. I've shown it before, but I can actually, when no one's, I can actually be in the room and push that amp into overdrive comfortably. It's like on the border of comfort, but I can do it. If my door is closed, no one in the house really complains about it. If my door is open, they complain about it. But I can,
I can amp wattage and loudness thing. The amp wattage and loudness thing on forums and in discussions with guitar players, we've been sold so much bad information over the years, because it's all marked. Like, you need a way to tier out products. So you'll have like a 10 watt, a 50 watt, and a 100 watt. And they're like, well, the 50 watt's going to be too loud, so I get the 10 watt. And they're both through the same 112 cabinet. You're like, friend, like, the volume, like the perceived volume difference as you crank either one up is like gonna be negligible. It's 2 dB or something. So it's like, there's all these really confusing things that have been, I even see it in product descriptions where they're like, well, this is a 20 watt. So like, I remember a friend debating me that 15 watts wasn't going to be enough headroom, but 20 watts was for these two amps he was looking at. And I was like, my brother in Christ.
So let's talk about this for a second, because I really feel like I need to mention this. This is important. Because I put a thing on TikTok and on maybe I put it on Instagram Reels. I'm going to say this with all the love and due respect in the world. The gear I play isn't for the crowd. Never is, never has been. If it were all about the crowd, I could take a laptop and an interface and plug into one of the neural plugins. If it were just about the sound and getting something for the crowd to like, I play the gear I play for me. I play because it makes me excited to play. I play things that make me happy to be playing guitar, because when, especially I've done mostly blues cover bands. So when I'm in my 5th year of playing The Thrill Is Gone for the fucking millionth time this year, I need something to get me excited so that I'll play better about playing that song. Because I don't need to play The Thrill Is Gone for the 10 millionth time, but people want to hear it and they expect to hear it at blues bars. So I play it. So I play gear that makes me excited to play. And I did the Helix rig for a while and I loved it. I used it for musicals and show choirs and church gigs. And I think it's a great rig. And it genuinely could do everything I ever need amps and pedals to do. There is especially with all the updates, there is zero reason for me to own anything except a freaking Helix floor and maybe a power cab. Yeah. That's it. That's all I should ever need. But I have other stuff because it gets me excited to play, and I like playing live, and I want to play things that keep me getting excited about playing live. That's it.
Philip, I need to get you an Obtainium is what I need to do.
Ooh.
You need to add me on Facebook. You can look it up. I have a video clip showing it's the most transparent overdrive. Its lineage is like a Red Llama, but it has an active mid. It's kind of different, but it's the most clone-like-ish thing, but it's more transparent. Because there's a setting I set it to in the video doing like this John Mayer neck pickup riff. And I'm playing clean and I click the pedal on and you don't hear the difference at this particular setting.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then I start changing stuff and it shapes it. But it was like, this is, there's, and that's another one. That's like one of my 3-knob overdrives. I need to do more. I kind of want to do a double 3-knob overdrive.
That's the rage right now.
Ones. Yeah, that's a huge. Like, there's the Duelist. There's the.
Hold on. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah. I'll just start reaching next to me. Well, there's one.
Yep. That was King's Bones.
There's that one.
Is that a Wampler one?
Yep, that's the Pantheon. The Paisley Deluxe.
Oh, I love I had the original Paisley right when it came out. I haven't had the Deluxe yet.
I think this is the perfect Strat pedal.
Yeah.
This makes this does a thing in the mids that doesn't work for, at least so far, hasn't worked for my humbuckers or my P90 guitars. But you plug a Strat into this, it's perfection. I've got other I love a good dual overdrive because I like playing gigs with just sometimes my guitar, a pedal on the floor, and my amp. And I kind of need dual stage so that I can have a driven rhythm tone and then a lead tone on top of it.
And I've been debating it because for my next one, after the Sender 5 is like half out, the cases are waiting for me when I get home tomorrow. And I put some promo stuff, but then I've been thinking about the dual OD thing because, like, obviously, King of Tone is super popular. It's what is it? Isn't it dual blues breakers?
It's a modified blues breaker on both sides. There's a switch to change it from a boost to an overdrive to a distortion. I'm going to use distortion in air quotes because when I say distortion and when like hardcore heavier music people hear distortion, we think of two very different things.
Right.
But yeah. This is a hard pedal for people to get around. Like, get away from the myth around it. Like get away from the $700, $800, $900 used price tag and the wait list. It's a $300 dual overdrive pedal. Used to be $250. He had to raise the prices a little bit. And it's still one of my favorites because it sounds good. But
the K-Line one's pretty good. Isn't that why I say it? K-Line? How do you say it, Steve?
I call it K-Line,
but I don't
actually know.
The Chief, they have one that's like a copy with the two, and it's not bad. It's not even built correctly. My roommate kind of dissected it, but he likes that version better. Like, it's got some quirks that they just copied stuff wrong, but then it still sounds like better.
Is that the Chief, the one that's got the Chief on it?
I had the Wish Clone, and I sold my JHS clone after I got it. Because the Wish.
I like the one for Tumnus Deluxe. I like that. I played that one. A friend of mine's really into it. But I'm never gonna put out a clone. I don't care. I put the Shroot circuit in a case. I gave one to Ryan. He showed it briefly. Have you ever seen it, Steve? The black one.
That's
laser etched.
So, I'm sure I've seen it.
Yeah. But it was from back then. I totally forgot I made that for him. But yeah, I'll never make clones or tube screamers because was like, well, why? But I'll do things that can do the same tricks, and I've done that twice now. And I think that's the secret is you're like, it's not that, it's better but different, you know, or not. It doesn't even have to be better. It's just different, good but different, you know. Like we kept talking about with the amps and stuff. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so fun.
I've got to get my family to San Diego, so we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to ask one last question. I just posted mine actually in the chat. But what have you, real quick, what have you guys been listening to this last week?
Oh, I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was listening to my YouTube Wrapped, which was like, I don't use Spotify at all. I use YouTube Music,
Yeah, same.
and I was going through my top 100, and I listened to a really good podcast, not music, but I listened to a really good podcast that Premier Guitar did between Christian Flett and Reavers Cuomo,
Oh, interesting.
and it's really good. It's like an hour-long podcast that they did for Premier Guitar, I think, and that was well worth the listen, just because he's a way better player than I've realized.
Yeah.
Like being a very casual Weezer fan, and it's been years since I've really thought about him, other than when he was playing the Beast. But yeah, those are my two things. It's like my random mix of music, and that Rivers thing was really cool.
Cool. Yeah. He's Rivers is one of those guys. Actually, I would almost say Rivers is indie rock, you know, or whatever, power pops, which power pop in general had a lot of monster players that you just don't really realize. But I don't remember who I was talking to the other day, but I equated Rivers Cuomo with Glenn Campbell. Where if all you hear is like the radio Glenn Campbell stuff, you're just gonna be like, all right, like he's a competent guitar player. Like the guitar solo in Wichita Lineman is tasteful, but it's also something that I think I could learn in an afternoon. And I'm again not good at guitar. Like, but when you watch Glenn Campbell live shit, you're just like, holy hell, why doesn't where's this guitar? Like where's this on a record, you know?
Yeah.
And Rivers has some Weezer stuff where he just because he was he grew up on 80s metal.
Yep, he talks about it quite a bit. Yeah, and Fish, he was a huge Fish fan, so that's where his solos came from.
Yeah. So
the Nostalgia thing,
and he reserves all of that for their live shows.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything, Philip?
I've been in a totally different vein. I've been listening to Rustin Kelly lately.
Okay.
Rustin
I don't know
Kelly.
who that is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's only in the last couple of days, to be honest. So I do this thing on the podcast, on the Patreon episodes, which I can tell you what I do. I ask my guests to name 5 perfect albums and also give me a perfect song off of each of those perfect albums that I've been adding them to a Spotify playlist.
Right.
So there's a Spotify playlist out there with all the perfect songs that people have been naming all season. I'm going to change it next season. I don't know what my question is going to be for Patreon episodes, but it's really caused me to listen to new stuff every new guest that comes on. So I'm like, oh, I need to check this out. And I had Scott from the Effects Loop on, and he named Rustin Kelly album Shape and Destroy.
Oh, okay.
And so Rustin Kelly is married to Casey Chambers. I think that's right. Is that right?
And I don't know who that is either. So
country artist.
Casey Musgraves.
Musgraves. Sorry, Casey Chambers is an Australian country artist.
They divorced in 2020, but go on.
Oh, I thought they were still married. So it tells you how good I am at reading Us Weekly. But it's the good country music I was talking about. Like get a little away from the radio stuff. So I've been listening to that, but I've been on a good country music kick. Tyler Childers. There's a bunch of names I'm not going to remember because I'm bad at names, but that's just who I am. But that kind of stuff. I've been really getting back into some of the Americana roots, alt country stuff that I haven't listened to because I was so deep in listening. I'll be honest, the 2 years before that's been nothing but me listening to a couple of folks. The Brothers Landreth. There's a singer-songwriter out of Nashville called Sean McConnell that I really love. I listen to songwriters more than I listen to guitarists. So that's just who I am.
All right. I'm kind of mentioned, this was my lawn mowing yesterday.
Okay.
But I listened to Live and Lawless yesterday, the Unwritten Law live album. I go every once in a while, like I think kind of unintentionally, the Unwritten Law, I think it was their self-titled album. And so, I think the Vapors mentioned it earlier, the song Kalen. I think that's the name of that album. Now I'm looking it up. Yeah, self-titled, 1998, is an album that I just keep going back to. It's funny, in the song Josie, Blink-182 says, my girlfriend likes UL and DHC.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, of those three bands, Blink was the most successful and probably the worst of the three of them. And I think of San Diego bands, Unwritten Law probably should have been a lot more successful than they were from a musical standpoint. It sounds like they had some interpersonal drama along the way, but that they are one of those bands that I just keep coming back to every few years is Unwritten Law. So Vapors is now naming off every San Diego band. Bucko 9, great. No Knife is a band I was super into in college. So
Steve, before we wrap up here, because we're right here at the end, 2.5 hour mark, a little longer than usual, but it's always good. It's fun. So I don't know if we'll get another one of these in before NAMM. I'm hoping we'll get at least one more in before NAMM.
Yeah, I would like to, for sure.
Yeah, we should do one at NAMM, like the Sunday after NAMM, if we have any voice left.
Yeah,
because we'd be in the same room.
We could definitely try to do something like that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you bringing a computer? Because I will not be bringing it.
I'll bring my laptop. I'll be bringing my laptop, but I don't know how much gear I'm going to actually try to travel with. But Ryan and I are communicating to see if he can bring some stuff up, or y'all can bring, because y'all have more than enough stuff for us to do anything we need to do.
Yeah.
If y'all are willing. So
I just probably won't bring a computer, because I don't know what I'm sure my wife will need it for homeschool stuff. So,
oh yeah, that tracks.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good hang. I need to figure out which days, because I'm taking extra days off of work for prep and recovery. I need to figure out which days I'm actually going to be hanging out with you, but I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a blast. I think we're going to have a good time. So yeah, that's it. Everyone, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chilling out with us. We sure appreciate it. Make sure that I can't imagine you watching this live and not already following and subscribing to one or both of our channels. So make sure you do that.
It'd be weird.
It'd be super weird. But if you are watching and you already subscribe to 60 Cycle Hum, remember to subscribe to 40 Watt Podcast while you're at it. I greatly appreciate it. And if you are listening on the 40 Watt Podcast channel and you don't subscribe to 60 Cycle Hum already, I don't know what's wrong with you, because I'm pretty sure the Venn diagram of our audience is my smaller circle inside of y'all's bigger circle. So
I just dropped your link. Folks, hit that link.
Donka.
Go subscribe. And we got, of course, Ryan and I have our podcast dropping tomorrow. So hopefully I'll be able to jump in that chat. Though I have something. Oh, very last thing. I'm looking forward to buying my Premier Guitar Mystery Stocking tomorrow.
Oh, me too. I'm so pumped.
And hopefully this year I get the Marshall Origin sent to me.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting nothing but coal and ashes. So
all right.
Also, new 60 cycle hum. I'm sorry, new 40 Watt Podcast episode dropping on Thursday. It will be the last episode of season 3. So
who is it?
Creston Lee from Creston Guitars.
Oh, Creston. Yeah, Creston's cool. Yeah, he makes great guitars too.
He does, makes really great guitars. Super nice guy. Had dinner with him in Chicago when I went for Fretboard Summit. So
yeah,
have a fun conversation.
All right, and with that, stay grounded, folks.
Later.